make sure they're with a valid bond company, but they are when they're with levy.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, sir.
Yeah, this is another good chair. So don't feel bad.
He pulls it up. They just let that down.
There'll be a request at the next board meeting.
Danielle, you're gonna go way down.
That's okay.
You have to type.
I don't mind being short.
Yeah, but you have to type.
We'll have to test those phone books here. We could use, but nobody uses phone books.
What's a phone book?
I got, give me a moment.
Yeah, who's got a phone book?
So Bob, thank you for that. Okay. Tim, I guess I would defer to you as far as the best way to approach this. Would it be best to approach them independently in order, or do you approach them collectively on the whole?
I'll go through kind of the report on each one kind of sequentially, and we can discuss if there's specific questions
Okay.
related to the operations that I've considered.
Okay.
Is there any details that may come up as part of the discussion? We'll go from there.
Agreed. So why don't we begin then with the application and the materials tendered in support of American Aggregates. Again, if any of the commission members have comments or questions at any time, please feel free to interpose. But I guess, Tim, I would just turn it over to you with regard to the documentation you reviewed and the ultimate recommendation for the commission here tonight.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Pleasure to be here as always. We've got 3 reports on 3 different sites. We'll start with the American Aggregate site. As some remember, referred to as the Kurtz site in the past. Been a lot of work with the township and the schools office over the last couple of years on amending the consent judgment for this particular location, as far as opening up the some additional property that wasn't under control of levy that they recently acquired for mining operations to continue in areas that were not previously under their control and were not actively being mined. They've been previously mined back in several decades. When I say several decades, I guess a new number of decades ago, back in the 70s, they started mining some of that area. So it's been under consideration for quite a while. In general, so we've got the application, all the plans for all of these ones that we're talking about tonight were prepared by Keefe Engineering over the summer. Usually do a field visit and then general summary. The site on this one is got approximately in total now with the expanded area 184 acres. There's about 150, just shy of 150 mineable acres that are available on the site now. Their operation continuing per market demand. They do a variety of products out of this particular pit, mostly finer graded aggregates and fill materials. They did update the aerial maps, which are included in the plan packages, and they've looked into it. They do a flyover, try to do every fall, kind of show a good representation. We look at just at the plan view, looking at where the slopes and mining limitations and that with the aerial in the background really helps to see that kind of progression of how the lake evolves and some of the dredging in that operation. You can really see it quite well. The screening berms, fences, all the wooded areas surrounding the site are, as indicated on the plans, look to be in good shape. There's not really been a lot of changes on those in the recent years. I did note and previously noted that the applicant in the township agreed just last year to amend the consent judgment. That was finalized, I guess it was November of 2021. And the current plans that they submitted for the 2022-2023 mining permit year reflect the revised mining areas and the future reclamation plan encompassing all of that area appropriately. So, as far as the operation is continuing, both wet and dry mining operations on the site, we've got about 120 mineable acres were within the plan set for this permit year. a dredge operation that is continuing to work on the wet mining in the lake area, and that's continuing to evolve and on the, basically the south shore of the lake. The lake footprint is consistent with the planned, their total planned new lake area is about 53 acres. They have about just shy of 32 acres of surface area in the lake as of the end of 2021. And the dry mining, above water mining has been continuing in the north and northeastern portions of the site. Screening area and fencing and that remains in those areas, and as they get close to some banks, if they need to reestablish, they will. The equipment and process plant remains in kind of this similar location where it has for a number of years now. They have a stationary processing plant, the maintenance building, and all that is kind of in the southwestern portion of the site. There's the on-site suction dredge, which is continuing to work on the southern area of the lake. And they have some wash water filter tower and some other dewatering plants on the west, this will be the west side of the lake. The haul route remains north of the Holly Road, the Grange Hollow Road. That haul road interior into the site has been continuously moving as the lake has been expanding to the south. That haul road's continuing to move around the shore of the lake, and that will continue as the process progresses. As far as reclamation goes on the site, basically the reclamation on this one includes the current lake, and there's approximately just shy of 10 acres, about 9 acres of land has been reclaimed along the southeastern portion, just adjacent to Holly Road, which was done just in the last couple of years. So there's a 20-acre portion in the northeast side of the site that they are planning to start reclamation on this current year, and the area of reclamation continues to enlarge as the lake continues to enlarge. That's kind of future or final reclamation plan is for the expanded lake. So they've got about almost 20 acres of lake yet to dredge up and make that final footprint. They continue to use some of the overburden resulting from some of the mining. They're kind of building some of those areas for slope stabilization, final reclamation. It should be noted that part of the revised consent judgment was there's some issues with some of the slopes that were left from some of the previous mining operations back in the day on the existing northern portion of the site that are too steep, and as part of that final reclamation plan, they'll be reestablishing and lessening the slopes of those to within the new agreed upon slope limit. So that will happen in the coming years as the rest of the site moves forward towards completion. There is a lot of trees and growth that have grown up over those sites, so they'll have to be cleared again and regraded and then re-restored, reclaimed. From a bond standpoint on the site, there's a performance bond in the amount of $615,500 that is posted with the township per the amended consent judgment. Additional permanent reclamation hasn't been, and none additional has been completed since that bond was renewed. So the bond reduction will be reviewed as permanent reclamation occurs at a later date. So we just ask the applicant renews the surety bond for the 2023 permit year and provides copies to the township. As far as the permits go, there's various permits for this particular site. They have an extension of the soil erosion permit, which is held with Oakland County. Said the permit extension was granted on March 30th. County usually does 1 year extensions. They've been doing 1 year extensions, I think. They don't really say when it expires, but we just keep an updated copy of that on file with the township. And then address any concerns. I know the Oakland County, the Water Resources Commission does soil erosion inspections routinely throughout the year, so if any comments that come up, they usually provide a copy of their reports to the township as well, just make sure anything's addressed. Usually everything's pretty good. And then because there's a lake on this particular site, there's the Michigan Department of Eagle has an inland lakes and water streams permit that was issued in 2020. That one does their 5-year permits for that one, so they're good on a permit standpoint for that in 2025. So, and then they also have a similar timeframe, they renewed their groundwater discharge permit in 2020 as well, and that expires in 2025. So from a permit standpoint, they're in good shape on this particular site. No additional permits are proposed. So from a recommendation standpoint, we're recommending approval of the mining permit for this current year with the conditions that they update the current acreage of the lake as it continues to increase and make sure that the surety bond renewal is up to date, and copies provided in the township, and copies of the soil erosion permit. Happy to answer any questions that any of the commission may have, and like I said, I know the applicants here too, if you've got specific questions about the operation.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Is anyone here on behalf of the applicant? You are, and can I get your names, please?
Danielle Lalona.
Lalona?
I'm the mine engineer.
Okay, and you, ma'am?
Kayla DeCicci. I'm the geologist for London.
Okay. Danielle, how do you spell your last name?
Vilona.
And Kayla?
DECIECHI.
Okay, thank you both for coming. I guess, like I said earlier, I've not been involved in this process before. I just have a couple questions, I guess, that probably apply to all three of the applications here. You referenced the consent judgment at several points. Could you give some perspective with regard to that, if you know, or maybe Bob, if you know?
We amended this consent judgment to allow them to mine another piece of property that was not included in the original one to kind of fill out the lake pattern when it's all done. That's basically what we did. We didn't change the hours of operation, the haul routes, or any of those other things, or berming requirements, or any of those things. I can tell you that generally speaking, out of all the mining companies we've ever had, Levy is actually the best one to work with. They've got a full department that deals with what do they do with the property when it's done. And we've had discussions with them about what we think they might want to do with the property when it's done. They're very good about sticking to their reclamation plan and keeping their commitments. Out of all the mining operators, I've probably had the least amount of trouble with them.
Yeah. What is the consent judgment implicated on just the American aggregates?
There's a different one for each piece.
Right.
Each
There is.
mine.
Okay.
But if you look at them, almost all the mining permits are relatively similar. They're usually pretty consistent in hours of operation. It's things like you can't run it on Sunday. I think most of them are you can't do it after 7 at night. So some noise limitations on it, because the only problem I've ever recalled on this is the old Kurtz pit. The only problem I ever recall on it, some years ago, they had a mixing plant on it, a cement plant. I don't think the plant's there anymore. It's gone now. Yeah, when they had a cement plant, they would have a group of traveling, I think there were Hispanics that came up and would clean the rotating drums on the cement mixers because, if you don't get the cement out, it hardens in there. So periodically they have to kind of get it loose, and I didn't know this at the time, but the way they get it loose is they get somebody to go in there with some, I think, low charge dynamite and concussion it loose, okay? Well, they were doing it at about 3 or 4 in the morning, so I got a few calls that day. And so we just told them they had to change it. That's the only problem I've ever had on that site. Really, they've been very good to work with, and Ruth Johnson and I have gone there several times to do tours when we were getting ready to testify up in Lansing on maintaining the mining ordinances. And I've testified that out of all the people I work with, Levy has probably been the best one to work with because I think they're a larger, more professional company. I don't know these two ladies. I'm guessing you're fairly new, right?
We are fairly new. We took our positions about a year ago, so this is the first time we're going through this
Well,
process.
you definitely don't look like the guy that used to say.
Whoa, are you observant, sir?
So they've been very good to deal with.
They'll appreciate it.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Bob, thank you. I guess just another question. Reclamation. Tim, can you just generally summarize, I guess what that term encompasses here? Because I know that's a significant component of the process. And just so I fully understand the reclamation process.
So from a reclamation standpoint, these obviously they're open, active gravel pit mining areas now, open sand and, aggregate.
Yeah, if you didn't know any
And
better,
they're like steep vertical faces, and so as an active, operation is done, the reclamation includes basically, filling in and getting slopes, so they're at a minimum slope stabilization, so you don't have real steep banks and unsafe areas where, soil may be sloughing off, or people may have, fall areas. And then it's, covering with, material and getting vegetation to grow on those, reclaimed slopes. That's, so that when they're done, it looks like a vegetated, field.
and so the process of the growth of the lake, as you describe it, that's not a concern? Is that a natural part of the process here?
Yeah, it could be, the lake, the final reclamation could be the final lake area. It'll be a permanent water elevation area that'll be left when the mining operation is done. And then, typically, as far as their future development plans, a lot of them will end up being developed, and, around the lake area would be redeveloped.
Okay.
The reclamation usually is called out in the ordinance, but in some cases, it's specifically a part of the consent decree. And the story behind this piece is, the reason it's called American Aggregates, because we used to call it Hertz all the time, is American Aggregate owned part of the pit, and Levy through Kurt's purchase owned the other part of the pit. And what happened recently and kind of led to this revised amendment was American Aggregate only had one piece of property in Michigan. I think they're basically in New York, and they didn't want to keep it. So Levy said, all right, I'll buy it, but it needs to be reclaimed because you didn't reclaim it right. And if you look in the pit today, the least amount of reclamation is that northwest corner of it, which was not done to the right amount. I'm guessing it was done back in the 80s or something, before I was here, for just digging the dirt out till you got it whatever you wanted, and then kind of left it, and so it grew up with trees, but it's not the right angle. If you didn't have the trees on it and fell from the top, you would have a lot of momentum by the time you got to the bottom, okay? And it had a different reclamation angle of repose than all the other pits we have, and I don't know why that ever got done. It was before me. So those things all get spelled out later, and Levy's, like I said, probably the best company at having a department that looks at these pits and figuring out how do we maximize their value when we're done, so that you can do something with them, as opposed to a guy like Rock, which would just say, I'm going to get the last tablespoon of sand out of there, and it's going to be a big hole as big as I can make it. Levy's got a better department for doing that stuff by far.
Tim, you've obviously been involved in review of the application for mining permits in previous years? Okay. All right. Anyone else have questions?
I've got a couple. And I'm not a mining engineer, so if I ask and it may sound kind of like, what in the world, then forgive me. But had a previous experience of this in another community I resided in. But is there a continual assessment regarding impact to residential wells in the area? Especially if it sounds like as you're dredging, you're basically expanding the lake, which could result in the rerouting of potential water, for an example. And then also too, another caveat to that is a continual assessment to make sure that you're not going to hit something like a sulfur bed. I was involved in a community where basically a gravel pit, very similar to this, and they hit a bed and contaminated wells within a 5-mile radius. So
Those are good
is
questions.
something that's addressed or continually assessed?
I can tell, we've had one case where one of the mining operations, none of these, it's the old Homer Tolliver pit, it's on Dixie,
Yeah.
it's done now. Mining, and what he was doing in order to mine the lake out, he was actually pumping the water out of the lake, okay, at a fast rate to be able to use the excavation equipment in it. This pit, and any of the other ones that I've seen that Levy has, they actually have dug down to the aquifer and then they make the lake. So levee, I don't believe, it's to the best of my knowledge, is pumped any water there unless it's just running it through the treatment for,
Yeah,
for washing.
that's what I was curious
Yeah.
is the
That
process.
is the height of the
how it's-
aquifer.
How it's done, if there's a potential of rerouting that water supply or anything as you're going through the mining and constantly assessing it to make sure you're not doing that. As well as just looking at the geography, of the area to better understand, is there a potential to hit a sulfur bed as an example?
Most of those pits here dig till they get to the aquifer, which is what that lake is, the top of it.
Yeah,
And then they have to make it about 10 feet deeper, so it's not a mosquito pond. But none of that water's leaving the site. The one that we had the problem on was Tolliver had his permit for mining from the previous operator, and he had a permit from the county water resource department to pump water out and into the adjacent stream. And what they were doing was drawing the lake down so they could mine it while they were pumping out huge quantities of water. And what actually shut that operation down was getting the county to say, you're pumping more water than we gave you permission to do in the first place. Because I think they issue the permits and never come out and check them, is my guess. So that's where you would have rerouting, and it potentially made a couple of the ponds right near that mining pit go down for a couple of years when it was running the pump for a lot of hours every day. That's the only one we've ever had a problem with that. None of these other ones pump water anywhere, other than if it's into a rinsing process to separate some of the fines out of the sand and material. But it goes right back where it's coming from.
Okay.
And just to add to that, we monitor all the elevations of our lakes monthly. So we shoot the elevation of them just to keep track of it and make sure that the water that we are pulling from the groundwater to process the material, just making sure that it's going back and that we're not drawing that level down. So we're making sure that it stays where it needs to be.
And any type of, as you're going through and doing your mining, is there any type of analysis that happens to, and I know it's hard to assess, I mean, you hit a sulfur bed, sometimes you just don't know it, but I don't know if there's evaluation or intermittent samples of aggregate or.
We've drilled quite a bit across the entire site, especially the area that we're planning on expanding the lake to. And we haven't found anything out of the ordinary, so we don't
So you do
expect
like a bore
anything
drill
like
and
that.
then assess the,
Yeah, we
okay.
drill down and we pull up soil samples to look at it to see what the gradations might be and if it's gonna be valuable material. And we've
Okay.
done that throughout the expanded proposed lake area and haven't found anything other than decent sand.
That's a good point. All the more modern miners do that. You see them on TV.
Yeah, the
When I went
bore
up to
drill, I'm
the
familiar with that.
South Pole and pulled out cores of ice and dirt,
Yep.
they look like that. They come out in a tube and they segment what's in there. That's how they end up knowing I've got certain kind of rock or sand or whatever I need in this area. The old miners just used to kind of, the way our township property was originally, when it was Buffalo Investments, they just start nibbling away at dirt and they go, hey, I hit some clay, okay, leave it there, then just
And
go
I
around,
think
move it
that's
over
what-
here.
That's
and
what
go-
happened at the previous township was,
Yeah.
because it
Looks like a
happened
piece of the
long time
moon.
ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
Those are old mining operators, many of them small independents. The people that do it now, most of them are much more sophisticated.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Angela. Any other questions with regard to American Aggregates? Okay, Tim, I guess I would just note that the renewal of the surety bond, that is kind of a component of each of the three applications tonight, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so your conclusion, I guess your report speaks for itself. You found substantial compliance with the recommendation that the acreage of the lake be updated. So I would just point out that there was also a review done by Beckett and Rader. Now, they are not here. Danielle, they submitted a report.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was part of our packet for tonight. We've had a chance to review that. Does that deserve any lip service or discussion or questions? I guess if anyone had a question or comment regarding the Beckett and Rader report. Again, it's, self-evidencing.
Yeah, she had nothing to add.
Okay. So I guess to keep things moving, Tim or Bob, would it be recommended that the
Mining permit be approved, subject to the
Do
bond
we-
amount that Tim calculated for whatever the area is that still needs to be
Should-
reclaimed.
should we do them sequentially, or should we
I do
do
one
the
at a time.
motions?
We
One?
should do
Okay,
it with this one and then the next one.
okay.
Do you want me to do it?
Yes, absolutely, if you would.
Okay.
then.
I move we approve the 2022-23 reclamation plan for American Aggregates and recommend to the township board the approval of the mining permit based upon the reports of our township counselors and recommendations. Be adopted by the bond being $615,500. I think that's the right amount, correct, sir? And with the permits and everything else that he gave us.
I'll second.
Yes, absolutely.
Or
Now.
any questions?
Yeah,
before
open
the-
up for discussion amongst, just to make sure no one has. any
Okay, yeah,
questions or
and just
concerns.
with regard to the motion as stated and as seconded, does anyone have any further discussion or questions before we vote? No? Okay. I guess I would take a vote at this time. All in favor of the motion?
Roll call. Should it be roll call?
For money, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Roll
mean,
call.
we're not spending it, so.
Good idea.
I don't
It's a
know
bond.
that you actually have to do it since all you're doing is setting the bond.
Setting the
amount.
bond. No,
Okay.
We're not spending it.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
no
We want
roll
to-
call.
We can, no, no. we're
If it's not necessary, we'll forego.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, a vote with regard to the motion as stated and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion approved. So then we move to the second application on the agenda. That would be for Groveland Sand and Gravel. Tim, I'll turn it over to you with regard to your review and recommendations regarding that application.
Certainly. Second site is the Groveland Sand and Gravel, which is, it's in the northeast corner of Dixie Highway, Oak Hill. You're familiar with the location. This is a little bit larger site. It's about 325 acres. They've got a north and south area. That's the total area of property, although there's a section, northern section, it's about 112 acres that is not had any mining performed or proposed. So the proposed area that is currently actively being mined is about the 213 acre southern portion of the site, which consists of several different parcels throughout there. As highlighted in our report, the continuing mining and reclamation operations within the southern portion of the site. Similarly, the previous project, there is an aerial map that was included in the plan set, which accurately reflects the conditions towards the tail end of last year. The screening berms, there's a fencing around the site indicated in the plans. Everything looks to be in good order. Access to the site, there's a gate-controlled drive located right off the drive there along Dixie Highway, which has been the access to the site for quite some time. Mining within the site has been ongoing. All the mineable acres on this property have been disturbed. Almost 97 or 98% of mineable acres are currently mined. There was 141 acres that were approved for mining in the permit year. Previous permit year, they mined most of those, 138 of them. They were working on the south bank of parcel, the middle parcel, and then primarily in the east and south portions of what would be the east parcel to the approved mining limits. There's been some limited mining on the south side of parcel 2 that may occur. In previous review years, there was some continued wet mining expansion of the existing lake, but it looks like in this plan set there's no proposed wet mining at the Groveland site. Is that correct? It will eventually continue to expand the existing lake, but none within this next permit year. So they're kept out for the current permit year of the 141 acres. All equipment is to remain on the site. The mine operations is a portable processing plant. This was one of the ones where the processing plant had kind of encroached within a setback limit, so it was actually moved a few years ago, back a few hundred feet further away from the residential property to the east side of the site. There's all the oh, I didn't know that processing plants are previously moved to the falls within the equipment setbacks. Crush will be utilized on the site in the central portion, and they've got a variety of material stockpiling. And the haul route has been moved in recent years. It is now on the westerly end of the site. It was previously coming down kind of in the middle portion of the site, and as the continued mining and reclamation, that's continued to move over to the west side. This particular location has done some what I would call interim reclamation, which is temporary reclamation. It's completed in previous years along some of the banks. They're continuing some interim reclamation and grading along the Wildwood Road side. There was some temporary reclamation along what would be the west parcel banks, as well as the pit bottom. The previous operator at this site had actually mined the bottom of the pit too low in certain areas within the site, so their final reclamation plan is actually higher. So as they're creating additional overburden, they've been working for several years now to kind of raise that pit bottom elevation up to where they need to be for final reclamation, kind of getting some good gradual slopes down what will be the eventual lake area. So that's been kind of an ongoing process for quite a few years actually now. There is an overburden berm in the setback area on the north side of the site, so as they get to that point, when they get to the final reclamation, that big overburden berm will be pushed down the site to do the final kind of grading and reclamation around the lake. Kind of covers the current operations. As far as a bond on this site, there is a performance bond in the amount of $470,000 that's posted. Permanent reclamation hasn't been completed beyond that amount when it was previously set, so therefore we would recommend that the township retain the full bond amount of $470,000. Bond reductions would possibly be reviewed at a later date as the permanent reclamation occurs. That amount will be reduced. There, similarly to the previous site, there is an extension of soil erosion permit was granted. So we'll just need to keep copies of that on file from the Water Resources Commission. And then any concerns or comments from the Water Resources Commission, just address this if they do arise. And similar to the previous site, this plan and project is in substantial compliance with the ordinance, and we would recommend approval contingent on the soil erosion, sedimentation, and full permit renewal being provided, and the surety bond renewal being provided in the township. Happy to answer any questions you have on this one.
Okay, once again, thank you, Tim, for that rundown. You had made reference to the previous application. I'm assuming you meant American Aggregates with regard to the soil erosion and sedimentation control approval permit.
Mm-hmm.
That was not one of the recommendations, the updating of that permit, correct? With regard to American Aggregates?
Yeah, that's right. That one has been renewed.
It has,
Yeah,
okay.
this one has been renewed, but I don't think we have a copy of the renewal approved permit for Groveland.
Okay,
Groveland site.
hence the recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Anybody else on the commission with regard to Groveland Sand and Gravel?
Can we make a move?
Yes, Lynn, if you would be so kind, I would appreciate
I
it.
can read. I move we approve the 2022-23 reclamation plan for Groveland Sand and Gravel and recommend to the Township Board approval for the mining permit based upon the reports of our township consultants and recommendation that the Township Board adopt the bond amount of $470,000, also with our Tim giving his information.
I'll second.
Would there be any additional questions, comments before we take a vote. There being none, all those in favor of the motion as presented and seconded? Excuse me. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All those opposed? There being none, the motion is approved for approval of the 2022-23 mining.
Recommend for approval. to the
Recommend
township.
for approval on behalf of Groveland Sand and Gravel. So then that would bring us to the third applicant for the mining permit recommendation, Holly Sand and Gravel. Tim, once again, if you would be so kind.
Certainly, this is the third and final that Levy offers within the township. It's on the south end of the township along Tyndall Road. I think it's one of their larger operations. If anyone has not had the opportunity to tour, this is one of the good sites I would recommend certainly taking a tour of. It's a very large operation, a lot of different things going on, different processing plants and some cool material handling with conveyor belts and some of the different things that are bringing a lot of material from a large swath area into a central processing plant. So certainly something interesting to see if you get the opportunity. A large portion of this site actually is across the border with Springfield. So actually all the processing plant equipment is actually not within Groveland Township. So we will review that. A lot of the actual active mining area within Groveland Township on the east and north side of the site is starting to get reclaimed. So it's like I said, a large portion of the site is not within the township boundaries. Applicants continuing to propose active mining here. Like I said, their plan set and the site is basically broken up into an east and west district. There's a east side of Tyndall Road and then a west side. There had not been any activity on the west side of the road for quite some time, and that is probably the most recent change in the last years has been to kind of reevaluate and start some mining operations over on that west side. There was a significant project 2 years ago to put a new tunnel underneath the road to get a conveyor belt across so that they could get actively move material that they're mining on the west side of the under Tyndall Road to the processing plant. So that's kind of opened that back up for more active mining to continue. Similarly to the previous discussions, there has been a aerial map in the fall that was included in the plan set, which accurately reflects the site conditions. There are screening berms and fencing surrounding the site as indicated on the plans. There are several different drive approaches off of Tyndall Road to the eastern and western portions of the site. There are 120 mining acres were approved in the previous permit year on the east side of the site. They only mined about 110 of those acres in the previous permit year. They're proposing the 120 acres to be mined in this permit application. They are indicating that wet mining may resume within the lake this year as a possibility on the permit set. So as that continues in the north part of the east area. The bank slopes are all in good shape. As far as the west area, last year's permit was the first year that there were actually mining active mining proposed. There was 31 acres was approved in the previous permit year, the 21-22. They only actually actively mined about 9 acres. This year, the permit set plan includes about 44 acres of mining would occur in that west area. The applicants indicated their access as they started to kind of open that set up. There's some stockpiles and kind of pressure and residue on that side. All the equipment, as I indicated previously, is proposed to remain on site. The majority of the equipment is located in Springfield Township. So they've got removal of material within Groveland, using loaders, drag lines, gritters, and then there's a belt conveyor system that transports the material over to the processing facility in Springfield, which has their screening, washing, crushing plant, all that. There is a office in the lab, and that is also in there. There's a scale and office trailer in that, which is in Groveland Township side of it, but no active processing tank. So the office in the kind of the lab area. Reclamation for this site is proposed to continue on the parcels 1 through 5, which is the east side of Tyndall Road. They have proposed almost 29 acres of reclamation in the previous year. They only got about 11 acres completed. So a total of about 26.9, just shy of 27 acres in the east area has now been reclaimed, including the lakes. And there's some slopes on the eastern and north edges of that site that are working their way kind of out of that area and then towards the processing plants. So as those areas are finished and final reclaimed, they'll continue working their way to the south. So a lot of that reclamation actually started maybe 6 years or more ago on some of that reclamation, so it's going to continue to evolve as that area gets kind of finished up. So they've got another 21 acres of reclamation proposed in this current year, and that would continue in parcels 1 and 3, some of the areas on parcel 2 and parcel 4 closer to the road. They indicated the intent to bring down some of the slopes of the sides of the pit in parcel 1 mine limits, to kind of start softening the slopes and ready for future reclamation. And they've been using the kind of peat mulch mix on a lot of the reclamation in this area, which has seemed to take really well and allow some really good vegetation growth. So as long as the weather cooperates. Approximately 40% of the proposed reclaimable areas have been reclaimed on the western side of the site. There is no further reclamation proposed for the year for that western area. There was some mining that was previously completed outside of the parcel boundaries in previous years. Reclamation proposed in that area and to continue until permanently reclaimed, so they're going to kind of fill that back in and get the slopes and that reestablished. That was from previous operations quite a long time ago. The bond on this site is split up. It's a total performance bond of $1 million. It's posted to the township, $600,000 for the east area and $400,000 for the west area. That was reduced from, I think, 1.6 million or something in the future as I started doing some reclamation moving forward. We recommend the township retain the full bond amount at this point until further reclamation is completed. And the applicants indicated they renewed the surety bond for the 22-23 report year, and then they just have to provide a copy of the surety renewal to the township. Similarly to the Groveland sand and gravel site, there's an extension of soil erosion and sedimentation control permit indicated on the plans was granted in February of 22, but doesn't indicate when it will expire, so we'll have to provide a copy of the permit renewal from Oakland County Water Resources Commission for that soil erosion permit. So with that, this plan is also in substantial compliance, and we recommend approval contingent on the soil erosion sedimentation control permit renewal being provided and a copy of the bond renewal being provided to the township. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you once again, Tim. Just with regard to the reclamation process, like in 21, 22, I guess the objective or the proposal that was ultimately, I'm assuming, approved by the township board was 28.9 acres of reclamation, but they were only able to successfully reclaim 10.9 acres. So I guess my question would be, what happens when there's a deficit of, the stated objective with regard to the reclamation process?
We'll look at that. So the reclamation process is kind of ongoing as they continue. They'll in each permit year, they have an area of active mining and an area of planned reclamation. You know, all goes well, this is the area that we would plan to reclaim. In certain circumstances, maybe there was more mining area where that was still being actively mined, and it didn't get to the point where it could be reclaimed before the season ended. So it just, it carries over to the next year. It doesn't go away or not get reclaimed, it just gets deferred as far as, instead of being reclaimed in 22, it gets reclaimed in 23 or 20, in a future year.
I got you.
Yep.
Jen?
It also sounds like, as the reclamation is occurring, the bond, the surety bond is decreasing then in respect to how much of it has been completed?
Correct. That's really the purpose of the surety bond, is to provide protection to the township if they, you know, were to cease operations and the site needed to be reclaimed and made safe and vegetated. That's what that bond amount would be, the entire contractor coming in and do that. So as the reclamation is completed, that amount can be reduced because the amount of exposure or work that would need to be done to fully reclaim it reduces.
Yes, Lynn?
Well, when I look at your reclaim, it said they did 10.9 acres reclaimed, were complete. Approximately 27 on the east end had already been reclaimed, so that's 27.9. And I know you can't answer for Beckett, but I did talk to you about it, and they say 26.9 had been reclaimed on the east end. On the west, 65.8 in their report.
Yep.
I mean, those numbers don't jive. And I'm a math person.
I was looking at the plan after you asked that question. The 26.9, I rounded it to 27, but the total acres in the east area that has been reclaimed is 26.9, including the lake and the slopes along the eastern and northern ends of the site. So that jives. 10 acres was completed in the previous year, so the total that has been completed to date on the east side is
28,
27.
38, if you have the 10.
The 10 has been completed, it's included in the 20, the 27 is in totality.
Right.
Does Beckett and Reader show?
I think
With Beckett
they
and
had-
Raider, you have a copy of
Yes,
it?
they have it completely different. They have the 26.9, which agrees, but then on the west side, they said reclaim complete 65.8 acres, and that's on page 5. And
Yeah, I didn't indicate the exact acreage. I said the west side had been previously reclaimed along some as they get into actively redoing that side of the site, there'll be future reclamation that will be done. That area hasn't been completed.
so when they said it's been reclaimed, they're out of their tree in this report.
Yeah, I can't speak to that.
You didn't do it, sir. You're off the hook.
I would go with his number. Okay. Fair statement.
I will call Beckett and Raider and find out what. the
Thank you,
problem
ma'am.
is, and I'll email everybody, let you know what she says.
I think those numbers are what reflected. The plans indicate that there's 60-some acres of reclamation had been previously completed in the western portion. That area, as that western side is kind of reworked and redone, I'm assuming that will be redone in a more permanent reclamation standpoint, because the future reclamation plan doesn't really match the existing conditions today. So in my mind, I don't really consider that fully reclaimed.
Okay.
But if you're just going by the chart of what their plan set indicates, it does indicate 64 acres or something to that effect of previous reclamation. So
So that's a total, what they're.
on the west, they have this site is split into two, so it's 27 on 26.9 on the east and 64 and some change, I think it is on the west.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yep.
Tim, after land is effectively mined and then reclaimed, what happens to it then?
As Brian as Libby is the property owner, I mean, they can, hopefully they have a plan for redevelopment or reuse of the property. There's been a lot of previous similar operations that have been redeveloped, typically into residential. You know, they build a nice lake around the Groveland, and they build, you know, a subdivision or something around the lake.
It gets sold or developed.
Really? Wow.
It's done
Beachfront
mine.
property.
Yeah, beachfront property.
That's
We
fascinating.
like the lakes because it's hard to turn a lake into a landfill.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, it's very easy to turn a big hole in the ground into a landfill.
And there is, I mean, for a small, community, there is an abundance of mining operations going on, and if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't have a clue. But I guess maybe to the applicant interest here tonight, is there something special about the township that makes it amenable to the mining industry?
The glacial moraine.
Yes.
Millions of years ago, ran basically down the corridor between Dixie and I-75. That's how it all got there. And that's why Mount Holly's made out of gravel. That's why the ORV park's old gravel pits. That's why the township property's a gravel pit. And that's why these three are all gravel pits.
So,
If you go into Springfield, you got the other half of that pit. And if you go north into Holly, you got the one north of the Renaissance Festival. Is also gravel. They're all in a row because the glacial moraine went down there.
fascinating. Thank you. Okay. So any questions further for the third application on behalf of Holly Sand and Gravel? No?
Want me to do my thing?
If you would.
Okay, we move to approve the 2022-23 reclamation plan for Holly Sand and Gravel and recommend to the Township Board approval for the mining permit based on the reports of our township's counselor and recommend to the Township Board to adopt the bond amount of $1 million.
Second motion.
Before we vote, any additional questions or comments? No? Okay, at this time, I would ask for a vote for those in favor of the recommendation for approval of the motion as stated and seconded. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? There being none, the motion is approved. Okay. So I guess that would bring to a close new business on the agenda, that being the mining review.
Bonjour.
I'm just gonna give you some of my cards.
Sure.
Dale Sawyer was the one who previously came to these
Thank you.
meetings.
Retired,
Pass
didn't
them around. Yeah, he retired, so, like
Make sure that-
Tim said, if you guys wanna take a tour or anything at all, ever have questions, complaints, feel free to give me a call.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Bob, do you have one?
I got to get home.
Okay. Danielle, there's someone for you.
Okay. All right, next item on the agenda would be,
Renaissance.
I guess, old business. That would be the Renaissance Festival update. And Bob, I guess I would defer to you as to how to approach this. There was a whole slew
We had
of,
a conference call yesterday with Chip, who was representing the Oakland County Sheriff on that call. And then
that was
George Cullis-
today?
No, yesterday. And then George Cullis was there, Holly's attorney was there, Will was there. The deputy and ordinance person at Holly was there, and Pam Mazik from the planning commission was there. It was about an hour and a half altogether call. And we went over what our concerns were and what we wanted to see, and I don't know, do you want to go over it with them?
Well, this topic is nothing new to the community, and so we revisited the concerns and with input from Holly Township, and it was good to hear that they are in lockstep with Groveland Township as far as concerns for health and welfare, concerns about the inability of the festival to achieve an effective traffic management plan, notwithstanding expectations that are expressed year after year after year after year. So what it seems to me the commission is going to be considering and requiring, in my opinion, is a plan that has contractual conditions that are enforceable predictable, not on a speculative basis, not on a NIFCOM, not on if we hope it's going to happen, but something that the township can look to and understand will be an enforceable obligation on the part of the festival before it votes on any application, before it approves any permit. I was just provided today some material from last year's review, which there were many similar topics that were raised on the phone call the other day and in the course of the weeks and months that preceded it, and the letter that the township sent out a couple weeks ago. And somebody's surprised, a lot of the same topics are again, but nothing was, again, notwithstanding all best intentions, accomplished. So the board, the commission, it seems to me, will be revisiting the same topics with an eye towards fashioning a plan that is realistically enforceable.
Thank you.
If I might add a little bit, there have been
Yeah, please.
several calls between Jim, the owner, and me, just a couple. I've been pressing them really since the festival ended in October, that we needed to get together and get this thing rolling. If you recall last year, we started in October, and the day before the open, we were still getting stuff done because it kind of dragged out. One of the critical issues that I think fell apart last year was, correct me if you feel differently, but I think everybody on the planning commission and I were pretty clear on what we expected to happen as the plan B in the event that the traffic got all backed up again over the 2 mile mark each way, that the gates could be closed, the traffic would be waved on. Kathy tried telling me during the festival, oh, I thought you meant all 4 lanes. And I don't know anybody that ever said that or at any time that we even remotely indicated that. So those are kind of the frustrating things. Jim did write me a letter saying, I think he knew I was quite upset about how things went, just put it that way, and wrote me a letter that said he was going to work on them, and he made a couple of suggestions. One of them, if they do it that way, would have some merit. They said they give out, that's a rough, correct me if I'm wrong, it's about 30,000 tickets that are promotional ones, like the fire department gets. And that 71% of those tickets got used on the last 2 weekends.
70%?
Yeah, about 20,000.
I'll do you one better. I went back and looked at the numbers again today.
Okay.
90% get used in the last 3 weekends.
Oh my.
Okay. And so this has been, as you recall, for as long as I've been here, it's always the last 2 or 3 weekends that are the worst. And it's because the Woodward Cruise and Back to the Bricks are early on in August, and some other activities, I think the 4-H fair in Springfield. And then, so anybody that's got one of the tickets, since they're open for all 7 weekends, kind of waits to the end, and it's like, damn, I gotta go, or I can't use it, my ticket's no good. And that's why they get this big onslaught at the end. Now, the idea he put forward was, we're gonna not let the free tickets be used on the last 2 weekends. And if you actually have some way to, turn the people away when they get there or something, I guess, I don't know, maybe that has some merit, because it would pull about probably 25,000 out of that 2 weekends, right? The other suggestion he had was to put, I think, 6 or 8 more Oakland County deputies on the secondary roads telling people not to use them. And I said that is akin to closing the door on the barn after all the horses ran out of it. And furthermore, I don't believe there's any legal basis for a sheriff or an MSP trooper to tell people they can't use a public road, okay? That's why we had to post no parking signs on Perryville, no U-turns on Dixie Highway, because you have to have that before you can even write somebody a ticket. And I don't remember what the other one was. I wrote him back and said I had some concerns over those, and he got one more letter to me that said, I'm taking him serious, we're gonna try and come up with some solutions. Chip was involved in the call yesterday, and I guess this is, I'm open to comments or suggestions from anybody, but I think what has to happen is to eliminate what happened last year, where we should have been able to say, you have traffic backed up 4, 5, 6 miles each direction, because at one point in time, it was from the festival south on Dixie, west on Grange Hall, over the viaduct, into Holly Township, all the way to Fagan Road where that other fire station is.
Oh, my
Okay?
Lord.
Going north, it was north on Dixie, up over the viaduct that crosses over I-75, back down onto what becomes on Saginaw, going into Goodrich. So this is where I think there's a huge safety concern for people. And I did go to check one of the weekends, and when I went, one of our firemen has the little golf cart they used to get around the fairgrounds there. He took me around so I could look at the parking lot. When I got done, he said, don't turn out on Laring Road right towards Dixie. You'll never get out of here. So he said, you have to go left and then pick up Grange Hall on one of those other side streets. And when I left, it was just a constant string of cars on those gravel roads trying to get somewhere that you could get out of there. And so I think those are the safety issues and concerns we have. And we all know there's been times when mothers have pushed strollers out. And one of the things they did was put out a notice on some of them that said, sorry, the parking lot is full. It didn't say, and the Renaissance Festival is closed.
Right, that just means they'll park elsewhere, like.
And
Yeah.
that's exactly what they did. They parked up both sides of Dixie Highway, and through frankly, a screw up from somebody in the state police and I think the Oakland County Sheriff. I had 9 tow trucks here one day to start towing cars away, and the guy got to tow 1 car before the police officers sent him away.
What?
Why?
Well, apparently, everybody in the MSP detachment except the afternoon shift sergeant knew about it. And he was the one who said, no, I have to write the tickets. And no, he doesn't. Kevin and I can issue the orders, they have to tow. And I covered that with the lieutenant, and I stopped at the fire station in the morning when the traffic was bad, and I reminded him, I said, you guys know we're gonna be tolling, right? And he said, oh yeah, everybody got about 3 or 4 email messages on it, we all know, but apparently everybody knew it like the one afternoon shift. So it's clear that even though I went to great lengths to try and make sure everybody knew what we were doing, it still got fumbled up, okay? But the traffic was bad, it was horrendous. I'm concerned about the public safety, and so is George and Holly and Pam, you know, used to be here and lives in Holly now. And I did not feel the answers we had were real good. And so I would suggest that whatever you come up with a solution, it be crystal clear in the most minute detail and put into writing so that there's absolutely no chance for somebody to say, oh, I thought you meant all 4 lanes have to be blocked, which we've never said. That was the whole purpose of keeping the festival traffic to the 1 lane on each side so it could still be open. I think we had about 5 U-turn accidents because when the traffic gets this bad, you can post all the no U-turn and no parking signs you want until you're blue in the face, and people do it. And the other thing that became very apparent, once the GPS systems, you know, there's 5 or 6 of them that have mapping directions on them, see the backup of the traffic from the subscribers driving around, they start putting out alternate routes. And so that leads to them then going down Groveland to Van Road, down to Thread Valley, or I mean, Trip Road, and then out. And then you see people that go, I know it's a backup for a couple of miles, so I will come up somehow on Trip Road, and then I will stick my nose out when I can and wait till somebody lets me scooch into the line ahead of the other 3 miles of car that is behind me, right? And that, or they decide it's shorter coming south and going north, and they make a U-turn in a no U-turn area, and then there's an accident there, and then our fire truck has to go there, and it takes 15 or 20 minutes to clear an accident scene so you can move traffic again. So I think what we have to come up with is an agreement that both parties sign that is very specific with no room for misunderstanding on exactly what happens. And I said this several times last night. This is very simple and clear cut. We are beating a dead horse here because we've done this so many times. There are only 2 solutions that I can see. One of them is you have date specific tickets and you cap it at a date number that you know works there. Now, I know the festival doesn't want it, but that will work, right? The other one is you come up with a plan that is robust enough to take care of your unexpected turnouts that happen, because we can't have it where they say, well, it works pretty good, and in the past, Kathy has said to me, when it all falls apart, we punt and all do what we can. Well, that's the problem. We need a specific plan, and I thought we had one last year, and it was not executed. I'm okay if they can put a plan together and demonstrate with the right kind of resources how it will move the traffic in and out, because one of the problems that came up is your parking person has told me in my office, when they show up at 10 in the morning, I cannot get them off the road into the parking lot as fast as they're coming in. I understand what you're saying. Again, that's the festival's problem. They have to figure out, and I think what they need is a major redesign of their parking facilities, the access points to their parking facilities, and a significant upgrade in the personnel that are actually doing it. Yesterday, Chip told us he was soliciting some bids from a parking company. If you recall, in the past, they said that nobody would ever do it, but I believe what you really have, when people say I can't get any more property or I can't get somebody to do it, that usually really means I'm not willing to pay what they want to pay.
Bob, not to interrupt, I do apologize, but before you go any further, I know Mr. Christopher has to leave at 8:15, and I know you've had a chance to review the materials. I want to give you just an opportunity to speak to the topic before you have to depart for the evening.
Thanks, Jeff, I appreciate it.
That's okay, I'm done.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Bob, I just know he has an obligation.
I'm substantially cooled off from last night.
Has he, Shorty?
Right, well.
Yeah, give us a couple minutes.
All right, go ahead, Jim.
So Bob, there is a third choice, that they're not here. And Chip, I'm sorry to say it, I love the thing.
Jim, that would never happen.
Well, it may not, but
You couldn't do that.
don't you want to
You
bet?
couldn't do that.
We're a township. I would
I
be
understand,
happy to
but
engage you guys in this.
And I get, and we'll talk about it later, but I think that option is not a totally viable option. And we would all be in court and all that other, do we really want to drag that out?
You guys can't fix it.
Yes,
So
we
what's
can
the
fix
choice?
it. We can fix it, Jim.
Well, since
Go ahead, just finish.
2015,
Go ahead
I
and
don't want to
finish.
bitch. Anyhow, listen, I fully support what Bob has said. I think there needs to be some professionalism, some intellectual horsepower to make this thing work in some type of bite, everybody, that if it doesn't work, it hurts. I mean, cash bond if it's possible, whatever it needs to be, but enough is enough. The township, Chip feels unbelievably disrespected. Everyone on this board spent hours during their summer last year. It's not any better. I don't want to come back here for special meetings. You haven't proved it. You haven't done anything, you guys. And I'm not picking on you. It's the whole process. And honestly, I think we all feel the same. I'm sorry. I suspect we all feel the same way.
Yeah.
And these gentlemen certainly have our best interests. And I support it 100%.
Well, I think, well, you do speak for me with regard to the frustration element. And maybe it was naivete on my part. Historically, I didn't have the experience to draw upon like certain members of the commission, and certainly Bob, yourself. But I thought we had really done an outstanding job of confining the issues only to have the issues recur again. And
Because they weren't implemented.
Well, I think too, the plan that was proposed and the direction that MRF was moving, when it came down to it, it seemed like a reasonable plan with the new driveway or whatnot, but there was no execution at the end of the day. And the problem is you can't hold their feet to the fire in terms of accountability over the course of the season.
In the middle of it, it's impossible.
yeah,
And that's what frustrates me is we did our due diligence and I thought that a well thought out plan was put together, the new driveway was put in, and I drove by, I went to the Renaissance Festival earlier in the season, not the last 3 weeks. And the first thing I noticed was the new driveway wasn't even being utilized.
The exit?
Yeah,
Yes, it was.
no, it wasn't. They had they actually had it roped off and blocked off, and I thought at first, we went in there in the morning thinking, okay, well, maybe they blocked it off for a reason. We went out in the afternoon, we exited the same area that we came in, and we drove by there again, and again, it was blocked off. So at the time that we went, it was not being used.
There have been several instances, and I've known Chip a long time. I don't want to pick
30 years.
Chip.
That's right. You've been the township supervisor.
Yes. I just say there have been a lack of consistency on their part. For example, when we had the first really bad weekend where I had 9 tow trucks in a row, okay, and it was all backed up, Peterson wanted to meet me at River Rock, and I did. And he said, I promise you this, Bob, tomorrow and the next weekend, which was the 7th weekend, won't be like this, okay? And ironically, Sunday went fairly well, okay? The next weekend was a complete blowout again. Now, one of the things that came up that I told them about was the poor guys that live in that mobile home park next to the camp, to the festival. A guy called me and said, I go to work in the afternoon. It took me 20 or 30 minutes to get out of the park, out of the drive to the mobile home park. I can't do that every day. And I told that to Peterson so that he could put a deputy there. And then he told me, you call me, you shouldn't have to take those calls. I said, well, okay. And I have his phone number. And the guy called me the next day and said, I told you I can't get out of here. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give you the phone number, just a cell phone, to the guy that owns the festival. I'd like you to tell him that because I told him about you yesterday and he said he'd take care of it.
But I don't understand from a legal aspect, and maybe this is something that Will can answer. I still don't understand because I thought that there was a section in here, and I'd have to find it again. But I still do not understand why, if what was documented in terms of the plan, if it is demonstrated that any point of that plan is not being executed, why can't we retract the permit from a legal standpoint? That's what I don't understand, because that is what was signed off for, and that was that was the premise in which there was a vote to issue that permit. And if basically, so to me, in my eyes, that's a contract right there. And if there's any point in there where there was failure to uphold an obligation that was within that plan, then why can't we retract the permit?
Well,
that's what I don't understand.
Bob, I'm sorry, Will, did you hear the question that she just asked?
I think I understand. So,
Yeah.
and I apologize, I was just confirming with Danielle that the material that she sent me today reflects last year's approved permit, and I do have some comments on that.
Okay.
But to your point, once a permit is approved for the season, if during the course of that season it's determined that there's failure to comply with the obligations that the commission indicated needed to be met in order to have the permit approved, you do have the ability to bring that matter to court. Right? It would be a complaint for injunctive relief saying this permit this year has been not complied with. Judge, do something. That's hard to do, and you don't want to do that if you can avoid it. But that's an option. And so, but every year that there was an application for a permit, an approved permit, the festival went without any effort by the township to assert a failure to comply, and then the permit, lapsed because it was the end of the festival. That it really starts the topic reviewing. There's really nothing to bring to court from prior years.
Yeah, I get that, but I think at least in this case, this past season, and maybe that's something that we need to make sure that we keep in our back pocket as the ultimate nuclear option of no kidding, if there's failure to comply with the plan, then we proceed down that route, as painful as it is. I mean, it's,
But see, it's so, and if I may, it's so difficult in the moment when the pot is boiling over to then, in the confines of that approval, that year of the event, to rush into court and gain immediate injunctive relief. That's a process that takes time, right? So we could have done it if the issues were in material breach of the conditions that the commission laid out for approval of the special use permit. But I think, and this is why I'm glad Will's here tonight, there's a better means of gaining
oh yeah,
cooperation
I wholeheartedly agree that we need to do a better job from a contractual, make it more like a contractual obligation.
You need to make
Things-
it like a consent decree on a mining operation.
Right.
It's filed with a court.
Yep.
It says exactly what happens in every condition, and then you can document easily. This didn't get done. I would suggest to you that if they had done what we all laid out and all thought we had agreement on last year, they would have blocked the traffic after the 2 mile mark, started sending them on home. That is a painful thing for them to do, because now they got thousands of people that are pissed at them, and they were, because they shut off their Facebook page because it was nothing but complaints, as well as the voice of Groveland and the voice of Holland.
But personally, I'm just of the opinion, the better way to approach this is to look to the things that have proven to be problematic in the past and directly target those for
And I
curation with regard to elements of a consent decree or however we want to tie that.
I agree with you, and here's why I said I didn't quite finish it when Jim wanted to comment before he left, but there's 2 things. You either cap daily attendance at a number you know works until you can prove you can handle that, or the other alternative is if you can't tell me how many people are gonna show up, and you can't tell me when they're gonna come in, and you don't know how many you have to park, it's clear they don't have enough parking, because on 2 different days, Kathy called me around 2:30, 3 o'clock and said, I'm letting you know the parking lot is full and I'm closing it. Not I'm closing the festival, which has compounded the problem, right? That tells me that if you've got your parking lot full of 9,500 cars, which is roughly its capacity, or about 33,000 people, when it gets to that point and I still have miles of cars both ways on the road, you need another probably 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 parking spots.
So
So that when you say what is the problem, it's always the same thing. They are a victim of their own success. You either have to control the daily attendance or you have to provide enough capacity to handle significantly higher numbers than you do now and be prepared to do that every time. The other thing they've done is in the past they've tried busing from Mount Holly, I think it was, okay? Well, the problem with that was, the first time they tried that, guess what? They said, okay, it's getting bad, get the bus drivers here. The bus drivers all got stuck in the same traffic. I can't get out, I'm gonna be here for 2-3 hours.
So the nightmare hypotheticals are, unending. But I guess I would call upon Will, if you can, what does the commission have available at its disposal within the time constraints we're now facing? I mean, here it is February, we're looking at, the special
We don't
permit.
have a whole lot of time between now and I mean, at the rate we're going, we're gonna have the same issue as what we had
And I don't
last
wanna
year,
do that
but
again.
Right up
Right.
to the season.
Right, so that's an excellent question. So it's really 2 prongs. It's either, it's a cooperative consent arrangement with the festival where it identifies all the concerns and, to Bob's point, stipulates to maybe a consent order after a complaint is filed, but then instantly a consent order where there's enforceable mechanisms, a court order, in the event these certain activities are missed or not taken place consistent with the terms of the consent order. I doubt that's going to happen. If I was them, I wouldn't agree to that.
Right.
So what can this body do? this body you've got control over the permit process. And the permit process, seems to me, and it's not like the township hasn't given the festival advance notice. They've had over a year of very clear concerns from Fishbeck, from Bob, from all of you, what to do. With all due respect, they've chosen not to engage the services of a professional organization, professional engineers, to outline this. They're doing their best to guess at what they think is going to work. More parking, we're going to train up our parking people, but we're not going to hire professionals. We're going to get high school kids or whoever. So, and that's what I want to comment a little bit on last year's terms and conditions, because while I'm sure they meant well, none of these things are representative of an effective, cohesive, professional plan that has components that are enforceable. It's just Band-Aid on top of Band-Aid. And so it really is, it's a cobbled together best guess at what might work. And so that's all you're faced with. But to do your best, it seems to me that having a contract, enforceable contract that you know is signed up for towing services, for deputy sheriffs to be on call all weekend, and a certain number that have certain specific authorization to do traffic maintenance, to do, to be stationed throughout, up and down Range, all that they see. I mean, I'm not a traffic engineer, but whatever it is with the bodies that are required to know that they're going to be there, because we have a contract that the festival is going to pay the services to get those deputies there to coordinate the traffic. The tow trucks are going to be paid in advance to be there to tow the cars. There's going to be, maybe there is busing, maybe there is, a comprehensive plan put together by someone who knows what they're talking about, and paid for and predictably available to be enforced by the township. Now, that can be part of the permit. If they don't do that, you don't give them the permit. And what are they going to do then? As Chip said, to Jim's concern, you just shut them down. Well, are they gonna not open because they don't have a permit? No, of course not. They're gonna open, but they're not gonna have a permit. What does that mean? Well, it means that either they're gonna take robust steps to fix it with spending money, or they're gonna sue the township and say the township is unreasonable for not issuing the permit, and then we're gonna tell the circuit judge, well, here's why. See what happens.
Go ahead, Jen.
I guess as the planning commissioner here, I was expecting to get a report from Roe in regard to what they observed and saw last year.
Me too.
And and that was part of the agreement.
I know, and that didn't happen.
And we didn't get anything. And that just hugely stands, I mean, all the other little things, but they had contacted Roe and had them in place.
And Fishbeck had contacted them, they never did anything. I think it was clear when those two people showed up from Roe, and I can't remember the guy's name, but Bonnie, the gal that was supposed to be doing this, one of you asked her, well, what is it you're doing? And her answer, if I remember this is as accurate as I can, quote, well, we're really just documenting whatever it is Kathy wants us to put down. So they would make a drawing, put the road in and whatever else she told them, but they hadn't actually done anything. And we never got that study. And to this day, you're trying to get it from them. They're supposed to be working on it. But we are now going into our fifth month after the festival closed that I've been asking for this stuff.
So back to you, you lay out this permitting process, and that we tie contractual obligations to the permitting process that in our, best estimation would kind of address these issues that are recurring problematically. But what do we refer to know where to require contractual obligations? It's
exactly. And so Fishbeck has, and this is the material that I submitted through Danielle to the commission earlier. Fishbeck.
6 attachments.
Oh, yes.
So what that represents is in my opinion, the ordinances that are relevant to this process. There's 3 of them fundamentally. And I've highlighted some notes for you to consider as you go through that. That's the authorization that the township has to legally regulate the use at that property. As part of last year's proposed application and proposed compliance between Rowe and then Fishbeck, the township had to hire because Rowe wasn't performing anything. Fishbeck outlined their generalized concerns over what they saw, and then ideas about what might fix it. But they didn't provide it because they weren't paid for it, and they didn't really ask for it. Particular plan. Here's the components of what you should do to run an effective, safe, robust, unusual parking traffic plan over a festival that is occurring in a residential area over a series of weeks with unknown attendance figures. As Bob said, it could be, typically is, pretty light at the front end and then hemorrhaging at the end. But that's a choice of the business. That's their business choice. That's their business model. So it's a challenging plan for anybody to put together a coordinated effort to manage hypothetical traffic. But that's what the township's faced with. So to your question, Mr. Chair, it's a plan put together by a professional organization that knows the components for something like this. And we have kind of an idea from what Rose already provided. And so, the commission can only do its best with the tools available.
You mean some of the Fishbeck?
Fishbeck, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not up to the township to hire these consultants to do the work that this applicant is supposed to do. My opinion.
So I almost wonder if the focus for, this time around, because unless we somehow get the traffic flow study from Rowe, that was supposed to be performed last season, we're back to square one with no traffic flow study. But maybe what we need to focus on in terms of expectations, which could be talk to MRF about to see if we get in writing, is more along the lines of controlling that queue, for one thing, in terms of what do you do if it gets to the point of it's 1 mile or 2 miles or whatever that right number is, right? And be very specific. What your plan, the plan would be to no kidding close the festival, make sure it's very clear. But then also too, go through and make sure, so one thing that I did notice in the plan that was submitted last year before the permit was granted was I noticed that many times a contingency plan was never laid out in a multitude of areas. One area, as an example, Oakland County Sheriff, where any given period of time, they had the right, if they could not provide the proper, the appropriate number of deputies, they had the right to send less, and rightly so, because they've got to prioritize public safety.
And they're down 80 to 90 deputies.
So
right
that's
now.
understandable, but again,
Right,
what's the Renaissance Festival's contingency plan as a result of being short those, any given period of time? So that's just one example, but that's one area that I'd like us as a planning commission to focus more on or emphasize, is ensuring that there are contingency plans in place where if something does fall apart, okay, what is the plan of attack to move forward? And does that contingency plan, is that robust and does it make sense? That to me is very important here, which was lacking in last year's proposal, that I would like to see in this year's.
So just for the record, the last 2 weekends, I increased the amount of deputies that were there.
Okay.
We went from I forget the number, 15, 16,
I think it was 15.
something like that.
Yeah.
I did ask for an increase, I mean, I think we went up to, we had 2 or 3 deputies. We also had some reserves come out to assist with that, because we are finding, if I can speak now.
Go right ahead, Chip.
So I do apologize for last year's debacle. If you're not aware, or maybe most of you are aware, right after festival closed, Kathy Parker ended up in the hospital. And she was not in communication with any of us for probably 2.5 months. So some things did slip by the cracks. I was not aware. As you guys know, I was here last year when Kathy was in Florida doing the festival show down there, and I stepped in to be here to answer any questions, take any punches that needed to be taken. Once Kathy was back here, I did not attend those meetings, and she handled those. So I was not aware of what needed to take place in October after the festival closed. I'm aware now.
So there was no communication between you guys?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So that is our fault, because that was a lack of communication between Kathy and I. But then who expected her to be in the hospital and not be able to communicate? So I have taken it upon myself. I have numerous conversations with Danielle, emails with Row Engineering. We are working still with Row Engineering. I have been provided some basic data from Row Engineering showing on September 4th how many cars came in, how many cars came out of the intersections, which way they went, and all of that. Row Engineering, once I finally started communicating with them, were confused because Fishbeck had sent an agenda or some outline that, in their opinion, differentiated the parameters that was initially set by the commission. And so I have been trying for about a month and a half to find out if those parameters had been changed, or was Row still working under the same parameters. And we have determined that Row is working under the same parameters as were established by the commission. So we have been, I promise you, I have been trying very hard to get Fishbeck and Row Township Festival in a room to sit down and hash this out and come up with the proper plan.
Well, I get a sense that's where it's heading, Chip, and thank you. You know, before we go any further, and if I can just kind of back up to the nightmare scenario part of the meeting that we were involved in earlier. We've got 3 residents here tonight from Perryville Road, correct?
I'm familiar with all 3 of them.
Yeah, so I don't know if you folks wanted to weigh in or express frustrations, or if there's anything you wanted to add. You came here tonight, we appreciate that. Wayne?
I do have a question. It's not really something the festival can control, but I noticed this last season that a lot of places, households, the Groveland Manor was letting cars park on their property. And I was coming up northbound Dixie when the left lane was backed up past Grange Hall, and people are now trying to turn left into Groveland Manor to park on their property. So now you have both lanes blocked. So my question is.
That was never part of the permit process.
No, I know, and I'm saying.
And just so you know, I believe they fired the manager there about a week ago.
Okay, my question was, and again, I know it's not the festival's problem.
Yeah.
But how does the township?
Not that.
See, well, that's a private property.
Well, I understand that, but I mean, we had this years ago in the property next door to my mom's house at the time, where they were parking cars on that property. Now, it hasn't happened in quite a while. Well, what was happening further down Perryville, people are parking cars in their yards. Now, not only do you got traffic trying to go both ways on Perryville, you got people walking on Perryville.
Right.
So it creates a bigger problem. And the fact that now both lanes are blocked going northbound, trying to get, into Groveland Manor, into other spots they're letting park. I mean, I think the township should enforce, not allowing them to park.
Isn't there a?
We never, just for the record, we never permitted it.
Yeah.
We never okayed it.
Yeah.
When I found out about it, it was already done. And the point that you need to understand, when it's in the middle of the hurricane,
Right.
and the wind's blowing 200 miles an hour, there ain't a damn thing I could do to stop it instantly.
If I can, Will, do you have something to add then?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an excellent point, and I don't know who said it wasn't the festival's fault. It is the festival's fault. Expressly, specifically, solely the festival's fault. Why? First of all, the ordinance expressly says that private properties can't do that. Right? So our own ordinance says no private parking for festival parking.
Yeah.
And so ordinance says can't do that. The approved plan, the approved permit last year had nothing about that. And that's a symptom
Right.
of a problem created by the festival, which chooses not to implement an effective plan. So everything we're seeing is just a byproduct of people trying to make do with a failed and utterly failed plan.
Yeah, these are all symptoms of the nuclear ill, if you will. So the question I have becomes, again, how do we contractually, create an elixir to possibly fix that? And is it possible based upon the input of the consultants, the Rose, the Fishbecks, the history?
All the township can do, all the planning commission can do is react to the proposals submitted by the applicant. And the applicant, year after year after year, has submitted woefully insufficient, inadequate plans. And the township is doing its best to match up promises made, promises broken, year after year after year. So it's not up to the township to pay for all these professional plans. It's up to the festival to do this. They're choosing not to do it. They're asking you again to compile components of a plan that they hope will work. And again, with all due respect to Chip, who's doing his best here, everything that was made a part of last year's plan, the following 10 items have been put in place by the MRF staff to ease traffic congestion. None of these things worked. None of them. So, in fact, for example, the app, I find interesting that to the extent anyone uses apps to navigate themselves around here, this thing says the Michigan Renaissance Festival now has mobile text. Scan the QR code below to opt in to, and this is the data that presumably is on this app, right? To receive on-site emergency notifications, right? I guess that's in the park. Event updates, I guess that's in the park. Ticket specials and coupons. Nothing about parking, nothing about traffic, nothing about the park's gonna close if the traffic gets too bad, nothing. So, to me, and again, this is not on Chip, I'm incredibly frustrated because I see that this is an ongoing exploitation of Groveland Township by a property owner that could do better and chooses not to.
So
I agree wholeheartedly after reading your memo. I mean, it's just an ongoing problem. There's 2 letters in our packet from 2015 and 2016. It's the same stuff going on every year. I mean, it's the definition of insanity.
Well, I just have one other question.
Same thing I'll
make. Sorry to interrupt.
go ahead, Wayne. Go ahead.
The question I have is, I know we can't say, okay, you can't use Perryville Road or Groveland Road or anything like that. But are they allowing access to the festival for the people coming down Perryville Road?
They're not supposed to.
Okay.
I have stood out there personally and when I'm not parking the cars in the parking lot and have told people, go. They should not be going from Perryville Road straight across into the parking lot. They need to go north and
Make an illegal U-turn.
and then come in. I can't help that, but to answer your question, yes, the deputies should not be allowing traffic to cut across Dixie Highway to get into the site.
I understand the frustration you've had here, because that's why when people last year said, well, we need to put signs out on Tripp Road and signs out on Groveland Road, and no, we don't. We need to fix the core of the problem, and then all these other things go away.
Well, I agree with you, Bob, but the problem is, like we just talked about for the last, I've lived at my house now for 30 years. I've been dealing with this all this time. It's still happening. So,
Yeah, that's
so,
true.
so
But
is
putting
it-
all those other signs out would only tend to increase the size of the rings of stuff we're doing and make the problem even bigger. If we don't find a way to fix it at the core, so that people, because I actually think basically the festival's a good family thing. It's, it's kind of something you can take kids or grandkids to and have a good time if it's not 30,000 people shoulder to shoulder. But they have to be able to run it. It should work the way it does on those first 3 or 4 weekends. Nobody bitches about anything then, because the cars are streaming in and people are having a good time and they're not making U-turns and they're not parking on Dixie Highway and everything works fine. I said, they're a victim of their own success and they don't manage the growth. They just ad hoc react to it any old way they can.
Well, my point though of asking that question is that, one, because they shouldn't be letting it go straight across, because one, half the time, we're not even allowed to make a left turn out of our own road. So if the Oakland County Sheriffs can manage to let people off of Perryville go straight across into the festival,
And they should be able
then
to.
they should just darn well stop the traffic
You have
and
my
let us
phone
left
number.
turn.
Yes, sir.
You have my phone number.
Thank you.
So, but the point is, I know the long-term solution is to solve the major problem. But in the short term, a sign out at Van Road or even at Perryville, where Perryville and Van meet, stating there is no access to the festival from Perryville Road.
I tried it.
I bet you that, I can just tell you, I know that's not gonna work because they're going to ignore that, just like they do with the other side. If they make a U-turn on Dixie Highway in front of the festival and get nailed by another car, they're not gonna obey a sign that's up farther away that says, you're not supposed to use this road. Plus, I doubt the road commission honestly would actually allow you to do that. They are kind of tight on, we do the road commission, we do the signs. You come to us to get a sign, and that's what I have to do.
I am gonna call Alex.
And it has to be to their prerequisites and their design.
I want the whole problem solved. I mean, like I said, we've been dealing with it for 30-some years now. But the problem is, I mean, you might not understand it because we're right there in the heart of the matter. You're a prisoner.
I understand it. I was
You're a prisoner in your own yard.
We'll just try to talk orderly here, Kip.
And I'm gonna use one of Miss Will's famous lines, because I hear this all the time. The root problem, right? The root problem is the number of people that are coming to the festival.
Yeah.
And I just want to give you some numbers and an idea. We are going to, and I did talk with our attorney, we are going to eliminate comp tickets to be used the last 3 weekends.
All of them?
Yes,
But
all
how are
comp
you gonna
tickets.
implement that?
Because the tickets will be those comp tickets will be date specific,
And-
and we'll just have to make sure that when we're sending those comp tickets out,
You're gonna turn people away if they show up.
well, that they're gonna come up with, that's, my,
That's the
my
issue.
hope is that people will realize, but just let me finish.
Yeah,
what I
let
wanted
him
to say, okay?
speak, right?
If we would have eliminated those comp tickets this past year for the last 3 weekends, the worst day would have been a 20,000 person day.
And you can handle that.
Because we had 26,074 on the last Saturday. 5,467 of them were comp tickets. If we were to eliminate those comp tickets, 20,000 person day, we're gonna get a little bit of a backup in, but it would be manageable if we could get cars. And I'm thinking somewhere between 19 and 20 is a very manageable number. That would have been the busiest day. If we take one of those comp tickets, 20,000 tickets. The closing date, 15,299. 7,679 comp tickets used on that day alone.
On the last day of the
On
festival.
the very last day of the festival.
Yeah.
So, as I said, the last 3 weekends, 90% of the 28,034 comp tickets redeemed were used on those 6 days of the festival.
And I agree, if they were all eliminated, that would have made it much better.
Absolutely.
But the question is, if there's still a ticket out there for 28,000 people, there were one or two other weekends, I think it's the Labor Day weekend, it's got some pretty big days.
Labor Day weekend, we actually was probably one of the busiest Labor Day weekends that we had, and we had 19,000 people on.
And if you take
Sunday.
28,000 tickets and move them into the first 5 weekends, you got a chance of having one or two of those become the 5th and 6th weekend.
But you also have weather conditions too.
Yeah, that plays a
So
role.
a lot of times when the festival is starting, the weather conditions aren't that great, rainy days, things like that.
I
You're
understand.
getting further along and you're getting towards the end, it's beautiful weather, you know, you got tons of people.
How many weekends are there?
7.
7?
And 2 of them are 3-day
It's,
weekends.
it's the last 2 weekends, we tend
So
to,
if you push
the
those
push
comp
is
tickets into the first 4 weekends, I mean,
If you
seems
can-
like
yes, sir.
the problem's gonna be mostly solved.
I again
right?
did
That's
the
what
math.
Bob's been
math
saying ever
today.
since I've been on the planning commission.
Yep, if we average that out, it would be about 2,500 tickets a day, which would take our opening day from 9,000 people to 11. It would take Sunday up a little bit.
Is there a way too that we can get, cause I think part of the problem too is at least what I experienced this last time, and that was my first time, and I don't know if it's been the issue in years past, but it seems like we were a little late to get the proposal from MRF. Is there a way that we can, and I'm looking to you, Will, from a legal standpoint, is there a way that we can construct like a letter to basically give a deadline of, the initial plan must be submitted by this date or else a permit will not be entertained?
Doesn't your ordinance
How many
already
times
say
do we do
90
that?
days?
How does that work?
How many times did we do that?
Yeah.
So your ordinance has specific dates by which an application needs to be submitted. And there's kind of conflicting dates because the special events outdoor street parking has a certain date, the festival has a certain date. So basically it's the tightest one is 30 days before the event. That would be foolish for the MRF to wait that long because you're not going to have a chance to really review it, and they're taking a big gamble because what if you disagree with the components and you require some more? They're not going to have a chance to accommodate, and you're not going to issue the permit. So we've been urging them to submit, not even as early as possible, months ago, a plan that would provide them and the commission an opportunity to consider all the concepts and have a dialogue between the township and the commission festival to work these things out. All we're getting, and Chip's doing the best job he can, but this is speculation. Now, again, just to pick on McKen, the numbers that he just identified for you, I don't know the basis for that. We've had no independent corroboration for those numbers. We've got some numbers from Fishbeck for a couple weekends, nothing from Rowe. So this is exactly what the problem is. There's a lot of, well, here's what we're telling you, here's what we want you to hope is going to work, and with no concrete, enforceable, objective ability to depend on it. And as Bob says, this is the free tickets, more speculation. Just because you flip them to an earlier weekend, you're presuming people's behavior is going to be consistent with that hypothetical. It may not be. A plan has to accommodate the uncertainties, the chaos that is baked into a business model where no tickets are dedicated to a particular weekend. That would fix it. But they're not doing that. So as a consequence, all this commission can do is plan for every weekend being the worst weekend.
And I think that goes back to what I was saying before. I think it's more scrutiny over ensuring that there are contingency plans in place. Because it's so unpredictable.
Yeah, so people like this are going to be blocked out of the ability to get in and out of their houses.
Right.
There has to be a price to pay for non-compliance, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Or there's just no No, enforcement.
see,
plan. And so if we had a contingency plan, they didn't do what we all said they were going to do, and there was no price to them for not doing it. They had people that were ticked off, so what? They still had a bunch of people there and got a lot of money. We had a lot of people ticked off because they couldn't get around the community. You have to have it, and that's why I said in Independence Township at Pine Knob, you don't stop that music at midnight or whatever that time is, it's something like 10 grand a minute for the rock and roll band to stay there.
There you go.
And they pay it when it happens too.
And
They're
how is
trying
that-
to put enough bite into it so that there's an incentive to actually want to do what you're
So is
supposed to
that
do.
part of the ordinance, or is that
They changed their
contractually?
laws. No, they put it in there. I can call them and find out, but I know that they implemented it, changed it. It said, we don't want people saying it's gonna be rock and
See-
roll
see-
at 2 a.m. You're done at midnight. If it's not, and it's an astronomical number per minute. And they have had some groups that said, yeah, we're going on for 15 minutes. It's gonna cost a bundle, but we're doing it.
So the element, I'll
Well, I
go
was
right
just gonna
back.
say his point, it's not DTE that pays that bill.
No,
No.
it's the rock and roll
They
band.
they don't care.
Right.
Well, but in your case, I mean, you're the only one that's controlling the attendance here.
But the point stands, it's enforcement, and I think that's what's lacking, because we can't craft this, this, I don't know, this agreement that we think will fix the problems, and then when it breaks down, just kind of wait for the dust to settle and then scratch our head and say, boy, we don't want to do
There
that.
has to be a cost to that, because when it's in the middle and I'm standing at Perryville or out on Dixie and it's miles of cars, there isn't a damn thing I can do at that time.
So I guess just keeping the discussion moving forward, how do we contractually identify opportunities for the commission to mitigate the risk here? Is it born out of the ordinance, Will? I mean, the ordinance gives us the power to carve contractual requirements into the permitting process,
Exactly,
correct?
yes.
And am I also correct that we would look to the consultants, the Fishbecks and the Rose, to tell us what contractual obligations we need to require,
That's exactly right,
right?
yes.
So, but this takes time.
Yes, it does.
So, and it's, working as part of a, public body here, it's difficult to make things happen quickly. So who makes the recommendation regarding the contractual elements that we need to put in place for this year's event? Who does that?
Well, so the township has the benefit or the misfortune of the history of knowing what certain problems are and then perceiving what might fix it. More deputies, more traffic control personnel on the streets, assuming we get the jurisdiction and the approval from Road Commission for Oakland County, the MSP, Sheriff's Department, bodies on the roads, tow trucks that can tow vehicles, parking professionals that know what they're doing.
And those
are all contracts.
But, well, those are all excellent examples, but how does the commission, in a timely manner, identify those and impress those upon the festival? Like, you need, because to enter into a contractual agreement, like with the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, you don't do that in the course of a week.
That's their problem.
Well, I
Actually,
almost wonder.
it only takes a week.
I almost
But-
It
wonder
doesn't take long.
in terms of instead of focusing on, because I'm going through and rereading some of the sections of the ordinance that was sent out earlier. And I almost wonder, instead of getting our heads racked up over the plan or lack of plan, or they didn't do this, or what they put in place is inadequate, I almost think that in the contract, it just needs to state things right out of the ordinance.
Yeah.
As an example, let's see, licensees shall provide for ingress to and egress from the premises so as to ensure the orderly flow of traffic onto and off the premises, and you can put some details behind that, right? To really button that up. Another thing, traffic lanes and other space shall be provided, designated and kept open for access by ambulance, fire equipment, helicopter, or other emergency vehicles. And I think there's another, so basically keeping lanes open. So I think we could take snippets from the ordinance inform that in terms of a contract and say, this is what you need to comply to.
But
Failure
you're
to-
referring to the formation of a contract by the commission. I think,
No.
right, the
No,
commission
no.
would just formulate the requirements of the contractual obligations that the festival would undertake, right?
You're fashioning the conditions of a permit, of an annual license, so
Right.
what
So-
you did
Right.
last year, right?
So how do you take the example she just drew from the ordinance and carve that into a
Because
contract?
hopefully Chip is taking mental notes, and he's gonna tell his employer that what it needs to do is, pay attention to what the commission is telling the festival. They have absolutely the ability to reach out and reach a contract with, maybe it's the sheriff's department, maybe it's the MSP, maybe it's another entity that says, here are the services that we want you to provide to us on these 7 weekends.
Yeah.
And here's the Groveland Township ordinance that has these requirements. We want a contract with you to provide services for us on the ground that meets those ordinance requirements and whatever else the commission wants to impose as a part of the permitting process.
So in order to enable compliance, it would seem incumbent upon, if not imperative at this point, for the commission to identify the permit requirements that would be tied to this year's application.
Well, and that's in part what we were trying to do, trying to have the festival do with either Row or Fishbeck. And that's the kind of traffic plan that Fishbeck made a good effort towards, but it's not, Fishbeck did exactly what it was asked to do. And I think did it really well. We didn't ask them to put a plan together. It's not our plan.
Right.
And Fishbeck, by the way, hasn't been paid. It's the festival that ought to be paying the bill at Groveland Township to put together a plan. So if I'm Mr. Peterson, I'm contacting Fishbeck, please put together a plan for my festival that I can utilize the blueprint that you're gonna provide to me and reach out to the Michigan State Police, the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, whatever other entity that's gonna have control over the traffic and help me reach contracts with these entities that I can submit to Groveland Township in support of my 2023 application for a seasonal festival permit. That's what I would
And
do.
also too, it states here that they basically wanna seek, you're supposed to seek approval from the county sheriff and whatnot in terms of the, basically whatever, traffic flow plan or plan you have in place to control, traffic and be signed off on, so.
We have initialized contacts with the road commission, and I think we did them that too, if I remember correctly. And they've all said, we'll be happy to sit in and look on your recommendations and give you our input.
They've all said we're prepared to help.
Yeah. But it's right, they gotta put the plan together for us to look at and say we agree.
Okay, yes, David, if you would, go right ahead.
I'm wondering, what are the penalties for non-performance of these contracts? Because there doesn't seem to be any teeth in what we're doing.
So if I could, we have a 3-year contract right now with the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. Last year was the first year. We have 2 years remaining on that contract. And as I told Mr. Hostler and Mr. DePalma yesterday, the Sheriff's Office already has written agreements with Byers Towing. At the drop of a hat, all they gotta do is pick up the phone. I can call Bucky right now. I got his cell phone myself and say, I need tow trucks here. We already have those written agreements.
Well,
We
it
already
seems to me
have
that
those
those
contracts.
contracts should be.
You
submitted
also
to the-
already have in place from last year, the sheriff's department's in and out policies on traffic ingressing and egressing. You guys have all of this information. You got it last year from their standard operating procedures. And if I need to, I can go out to my truck and I can get it for you and bring it in. You can have another copy. So all of those things are already in place to go into this
Good.
year. That's not something I have to worry about. I don't have the sheriff's office go to the commissioners to get it signed. That contract is already signed, sealed, and
Excellent.
delivered.
That's
But
good to hear.
You still have to make sure that the sheriff uses his buyer's contract to tow them when they need to be towed.
Absolutely.
Instead of sending the trucks home.
Absolutely.
And I need to find out why that sergeant never got told when I told everybody else there 4 times what was going on, and he sent them away, that we can call and send them away.
So Will, just kind of extending or expounding on Angela's point, drawing from the ordinance, you are familiar with the aggregate of feedback that we have potentially to work to identify these obligations. Is the ordinance, in your opinion, sufficient as written to allow us to fulfill that obligation?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want the ordinance to be so specific that it just picks on the festival, right? It accommodates any user in the community that has an interest in running a festival of this size, right? But there's many components that have been added because of the festival. So, yes, Mr. Chair, everything that has been discussed today and been mentioned can be accommodated by utilizing the authority of the ordinance. But with all due respect, contracts you mentioned were not part of last year's.
Yes, they were.
This is the entire package. There's nothing in here.
I sent those personally over here.
Okay, well, it seems to me that those contracts, and giving you an opportunity to read the terms and conditions of those contracts, to see exactly what's gonna happen, when it's gonna happen, the services provided, those have to be expressly part of, in my opinion, the permitting process and any approved permit for this upcoming season. So those are all part of it. And to your point about Ward of the Teeth, you'll have the potentially breach of contract, right? So if one of those components, those contractual components weren't met, the township would be a party that'd be able to, if it wanted to, enforce those contracts. I would suggest those contracts have maybe some liquidated damages provisions.
Yeah, like
And so
some fines for not having a traffic plan.
Money damages that are baked into the contract, if certain things don't happen, right? We see a mile backup or whatever it is that you choose to impose on those contracts, you can do. And I've not seen those contracts.
Yeah, because I think that we could really pluck from this ordinance, because I mean, it's, everything that we need is right in here, and it's just building the details, or you start as an outline in terms of, like, for example, the proposed use shall not cause transportation, safety, or congestion problems. That's your first bullet. So basically, you can almost construct a request letter for a proposal, and that also would serve as maybe the bones, I would say, of a contract, where basically you lay out that proposal needs to be provided to address the following, and you go through and we start bulleting verbatim the ordinance, and then they would come back.
But I'm a linear thinker, Angela, and the problem is we need subject matter expertise to tell us, and we need it timely. To where we as a commission then go to the ordinance to draw the authority for the requirement. But we need intel on the quick with regard to what we have to incorporate into the requirements for this year's permit. And I don't know how best to do that. That's what I'm struggling with.
Paul has been struggling with that as the spearhead of this issue, as far as I know, with the festival, and we've not had any meaningful response because the township can only do what it can do. It's not up to the township to take responsibility for hiring the professionals that I think are required to outline the professional plan that you're talking about, Mr. Chair.
Or we're not charged with being experts here either. So to me, it's like the one thing first and foremost. I mean, if it's a part of it is whatever plan they propose when it comes to traffic flow and safety. To me, I'm looking for a signed plan, a plan that is signed off by the Oakland County Sheriff and the Oakland County Road Commission, period. If those two entities aren't buying off on that
If they
plan,
say that will, in their opinion, it'll work.
Then it doesn't hold water. But if they're saying it'll work, then we need to trust the Road Commission and we need to trust the County Sheriff. those are the type of experts.
And that's why I'll say, Will, and I probably should have mentioned it sooner, but the issue about the contracts, they do send the contracts over when they have the sheriff's contract. We just don't know. Our purpose in getting that is just to say, did they get the contract? Do we know the sheriff's gonna show up? We've never looked at them and said, is it actually going to work, or what's the sheriff going to do? But that's what needs to be in there. They need to not only sign on to the contract, but state that we agree with this traffic pattern that was put together. Yeah.
Okay, if I can,
Yes.
this lady in the back, I'm sorry. I forget your name, but go right ahead. Jackie, go ahead.
I understand when they're saying they have contracts. What's their recourse when they don't? I've heard numerous times, well, we didn't have enough people in the park. Some people called in sick. Some people didn't show up. Even the county sheriff's department, there were times that they didn't show up. What is the recourse when I can't get out of my driveway, okay? Because there's a car parked there. Like, what's the recourse? What do I do? I can't leave. There's a car parked in front of my driveway.
You have my phone number, call me.
Yes, but you know what? I had phone numbers last year. I called, nobody answered, nobody. I had to call state police and said, look, I can't get out of my driveway. I have an emergency.
And what did they say?
And they said, you know what? We're gonna call tow trucks.
Oh, shit.
They not.
Yeah, well, I just have to tie into what she was saying and Jake was saying as well is, I ran into this not last year, but the year before, so this might be outside of any current agreements and whatnot. But, you know, when it got really bad that one year, I mean, I had to wait 4 hours to be able to get out of my own driveway with my travel trailer. And I talked to the Oakland County Sheriff who's driving down my road. And I asked him, I said, can you help me with this? No, we're only here for traffic control. He said, you gotta call the state police. So we called the state police. They said, oh no, that's Oakland County Sheriff's responsibility. So has the responsibility part ever been sorted out yet? Because the state police guy was ready to blow me off.
This is kind of what I'm trying to inartfully express, Wayne and Jackie, is how do we know about the minutia of the
interworkings of the agreement.
Correct.
Historically, 30 years of being at festival, historically, the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, Laring Road to Groveland Manor, Dixie Highway. That is what they are paid for, hired for to do.
Only.
Anything else is the state police, and good luck getting them to do it.
So the point that she's making, or that she
Driving from Grand Blanc, coming down Dixie Highway, from Baldwin, okay, and Dixie, it took me 2.5 hours to get home, because there's lane, you got it backed up from 75, you got Dixie backed up. How do I get home? There's no recourse to going around anywhere.
No, and I'm sorry, Mr. President, you had to spend 2.5 hours driving in that, because that's not as long distance.
But my weekends is the only time I can get out and get anywhere, but I can't.
I understand, and I truly
I
am
can't go
sorry.
that way, I can't go
I
this
am
way.
truly sorry that you were stuck in traffic like that, and I am truly
We
sorry.
couldn't even go down that road because there was double people parked on both sides. We couldn't, I drive a truck. I don't even think a smart car could have gotten down.
So I think what Chip's saying though, it's a jurisdictional issue within the confines of that space. So within that space, it's the jurisdiction of the sheriff's department to rectify issues that you described. Beyond that jurisdictional space is the Michigan State Police. What I believe is incumbent upon us is to require agreements with the county and the Michigan State Police.
Except I'm gonna tell you right now, the county signs contracts for services like this. I have not found, the state police usually won't. And part of the reason is they're woefully understaffed as well.
The bottom line
They got
is.
a training class going on right now.
The bottom line is, it shouldn't get to that point.
Right.
Absolutely.
Period. So I don't think that we should be going down the rabbit hole in terms of trying to figure out what the state police ought to be doing, the Oakland County Sheriff ought to be doing. No, we need to have a plan in place to prevent this from happening to begin with.
So
And I think that if a traffic flow plan is put together by, whether it's Road, Fishback, John Doe, whoever, I don't care, and if it's signed off and approved by the Oakland County Road Commission and the Oakland County Sheriff, that better be sufficient. if it's not sufficient, well then guess what? We need to go after Oakland County Sheriff and the Road Commission and drag them in and say, why did this fail? Period, you signed off on
Limiting
it,
people
why
in
did
the
it
area,
fail?
that area cannot handle that kind of traffic. It can't. I don't care how many people, how many sheriff departments you get. It can't handle that many people.
Well, again, I think it gets back to the traffic.
I mean, we
flow,
were told last
understand
year,
how
you guys
many
are gonna
they
close the
couldn't handle.
festival. Did we not hear that?
Yep.
When it gets really bad, we're gonna shut it down.
Well, they didn't, and again, that gets back to.
We did, and that's what caused the problem.
Right.
I have one
Enforcing the
more
conviction.
question.
Yeah, Chip.
Just a question.
Yes.
This is your ordinance that we have to abide by,
Yep.
right? So if we abide by every point in this ordinance, we should have no problems.
Absolutely.
So when I send this to Mr. Peterson and our attorney, and I say, the planning commission wants us to abide by every point in this ordinance, and we do, we shouldn't have any problems.
That's a failed hypothetical, because
How's that a failed
because,
hypothetical?
well, I'm
That's-
gonna tell you, because it doesn't address the specifics of the traffic concerns and the subjectivity.
But if we do the things that we say we're gonna do.
Chip, let's not talk over one another, okay? Go ahead, Will, if you want to finish.
So the ordinance doesn't speak, and nor could any ordinance speak to the specifics required to keep health, safety, welfare. That's a concept that requires factual overlay for each significant, event or festival or topic. So by just saying we're gonna follow everything in this ordinance, that means nothing. That means that you're gonna follow the law, but to do so, you have to work within the recommendations and input from the regulatory body which you're looking at now.
Sure.
So what the festival has been told is that to assist this regulatory body and be consistent with the ordinance, because they're not traffic engineers, a professional plan that contemplates a bunch of different facets has to be put in place. By the way, one of the things that the ordinances provide for is, and I don't know if it's important or not, but Groveland Township fire fighters, right, may be utilized if it's appropriate with the plan as.
Kevin don't want to touch it.
Just an idea.
He has a hard time getting the paramedics and EMTs. There are a number of them that work for us only for the
But
festival.
if they're gonna be paid, but
He just can't get enough.
okay,
Right.
so, but that's just an idea, one of many that can be utilized by using the terms of the ordinance to accomplish a goal, being safe traffic.
So Chip, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you were responding to him. You can finish at this point if you want.
And so, I'm just gonna go back to this ordinance and what Mr. Hostler is saying. This is an ordinance. To get a parking permit, we have to follow these ordinance, rules, laws, regulations, whatever we wanna call them. And if we do so, there shouldn't be any problems. I understand what Mr. Hostler is saying, and yes, we are still working with row engineering. We will be working with Fishback. Those aren't out of the question. These are the things that are gonna take place. I have asked Haley from Row Engineering to please get me the numbers and what you were asked to do within the next 2 weeks, because I really need to get this over to the township. If I didn't say it already, I may have said it, but it may not have been heard. I am currently, as Bob said, I am currently now negotiating with 3 different professional parking companies. Parking companies who not just park a paved lot. That doesn't do me any good. First question I ask, are you familiar with parking empty field large events? So far, these 3 have experience in doing that. One of them actually parks a Renaissance festival in another state. So they're experienced with parking a Renaissance festival in Oakland.
Yeah, but last year, we had it on paper that it was supposed to be sectioned off. It was supposed to be roped up, was it?
No, it was painted.
Painted.
Marked it was.
We painted lines. We painted lines for parking. So, and I know everyone wants to get out of here.
No, we want
I
it
want to get out of here.
solved.
Trust me, I want to get out of here. But let's talk about the day, September 24th, last year, we closed the gates. And that created anarchy. That created the biggest problem, one of the biggest problems we've ever had with parking. And it was a mistake to close those gates.
What happened?
When did they close them?
I wasn't there. What happened? People couldn't get out?
No, Mr. Newbill, if it's okay with anybody else. This is 11:45 in the morning.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Okay.
I have nobody in my parking lot, do I? Nobody in my parking lot. But a knee-jerk reaction was made to close the gate.
Kathy made that
A
decision?
knee-jerk reaction was made to close
Kathy
the
made
gate.
that decision?
A decision was made to close the gate.
When there was nobody in the parking lot?
And I had nobody in my parking lot. I quit that day.
Was it because of
I
the
wasn't-
traffic backup?
Traffic was backed up. Traffic
Why
was
was
backed
it
up
backed up if you didn't have, if you had all that parking space?
because it was backed up 2 miles and a decision was made to close the gate. That gate
see-
was closed for 45 minutes.
This is one of the points that Fishbeck identified, though, because the cars weren't being parked fast enough.
Yeah.
And when you have high school boosters out in an
Absolutely.
open field,
But had I
there,
been allowed
Last
out,
2 years, the parking crews have not showed up.
had we not closed the gate on that day, we only did 20,000 people when it was all said and done.
so,
Had we
okay.
not closed the gate, had a knee-jerk reaction, a mistake made on that day to close the gate,
So
we wouldn't have had people parking on Perry Boulevard.
I feel as though, maybe I'm talking too much, but I feel as though we know enough to, with an enlightened view, kind of identify the pinch points that need to be most addressed with the consultant input and, our experience as a commission. We can, in relatively short order, I would believe, put forth some type of proposal regarding the contractual obligations that we would mandate as part of the approval process for this year. Does everyone agree with that, or is that kind of flawed logic? No?
I think we can.
I mean, I don't know, I'm struggling for a takeaway, Will, like, where do we go from here?
You're struggling, in my opinion, you're struggling because the township has sent already a lot of information to the festival with no substantive response. It's all gone one way. And you're frustrated, understandably, you're frustrated because there's no meaningful response other than lip service and we're gonna do better. And it's not the township's responsibility to write the application for a private entity that's gotta come before you with their proposal that, of course, it's gotta meet the ordinance. But so far, and I'm just looking at what was made a part of last year's approved permit, it's got a lot of if comes and really not worthless, because there was probably some benefit to this stuff, but clearly didn't work. And we're still trying to cobble together a plan by amateurs.
Okay,
You
I
guys
guess we gotta
received-
bring
did you
it to-
receive this?
what are you referring to,
This was
Chip?
an agenda that Fishback sent. And you read
That was part of the
festival's
materials.
Response to their issues of concern.
Oh, I remember that a while back.
About a week, about a month ago.
Oh,
It was in the package about
yeah,
a month
I was
ago.
gonna say, I remember.
So we have
Yes, you're
addressed
right.
and we have answered questions, and we do know we need to work on some stuff. We know we need to come up with a plan. There has to be a game plan. I'm not gonna, Bob will, hopefully will agree, Commissioner will agree, Will might even agree. There has to be a plan in place that once the festival parking lot, not Dixie Highway, reaches a certain point, then the gates get closed. Even if you look at your ordinance, it even specifies, as long as traffic is moving, there shouldn't be any problems. And as long as I have parking in my parking lot, I can get those cars in, then the traffic is moving, I have a full, once the parking lot's full, yes, I would completely agree with you 100%. We close the gate, we change the signs, Sheriff's Department puts up signs that say festival is closed for the day, please move on.
Because that is indicative of the other problem that your parking people said they can't do, and that is get the damn cars in
We're
fast enough to
hiring
get
a
them off the road.
professional parking company this year
Well,
to.
and
take
if
care
it
of
does, you won't have that problem. If
We
you
hope.
actually get somebody that can get the cars in and park them quick enough, they won't be backed up for 6 or
Absolutely.
7 miles. They'll be rolling into the parking lot,
Absolutely.
getting parked.
I
Okay.
agree with you, Bob.
That's the
I
reason
agree
it got
100%.
closed before, is because they couldn't even get
Okay.
them off the
I
road
wasn't given the opportunity.
into an empty parking lot.
Bob, it's getting late. David, go ahead. You were gonna say
I
something.
see 2 huge problems that were identified today that Chip said is gonna be taken care of. Number one is the complimentary tickets aren't gonna be the last 3 weekend, honored on the last 3 weekends. That's gonna be printed on the tickets,
Yep.
correct?
Yep.
And you're hiring a professional parking
I'm
company.
calling more tomorrow. I'm gonna get as many professional parking companies, bids, proposals, and if everybody wants to join me, I'm meeting one next Wednesday at hopefully 2:30 in the afternoon on Festival Grounds to tour the site.
So I think the 2 other pieces that would just be missing outside of that would be
Don't go there.
a traffic flow plan, that is
For
signed
egress?
off by the Oakland County Sheriff.
The
and
sheriff's
Oakland
office has already
County-
signed off on a plan.
It says right in, they.
I have it out in my car. I can show you their plan for parking and bringing
I don't
cars.
mean
So-
parking, I mean,
I have, no, for
controlling
bringing
traffic.
cars in off of Dixie Highway. I have it sitting in my truck right now.
Okay.
Clearly, it didn't work, right?
It didn't
Because you
work.
shut the parking lot once when it was empty.
so.
No.
Right. Well, we have to look ahead. Jenny, you had something to say?
No.
Yes, you did. Mr. McKay, you had plenty to say. Go ahead.
This is a business entity and they need to come up with a plan and present it to us. It is
Absolutely.
not up for us to tell you and your business how to be run.
Absolutely, 100% agree with you.
And the problems that we've been talking about are not new.
Nope.
So if you could just go back and convey it and bring us a plan within 90 days of,
I would like to have it to you.
or
Say
120
what I'd like
days.
to- No, if it was up to me, I'd have it for you tomorrow, but I have other people I gotta talk to, right? I can't.
I understand.
If it was up to me, I'm shooting to have the parking company contract signed next month, March, is my plan with that. So, I wanna get that done and over with so that we can move on from that point.
And I wouldn't even say 90 days, I would say 30 days,
Yeah.
because if you do the math, we're at the end of February right now, May's too late.
Our biggest
May is
issue,
too late.
I think our biggest issue is, and Bob would agree, we need to come up with a
Well, I
plan
mean, 90
to
days
close the
from,
gates at a certain point in time, and I just don't
there's
think,
part.
and I
Yeah,
gave
well,
them the scenario
Well,
we're
yesterday.
way past that now.
I can be at
so
2 miles at
yeah.
11 o'clock in the morning.
Can I just, and I don't want to cut you off, I keep cutting you off, I don't want to do that. But we gotta be careful. The commission can't let Chip leave with a false premise.
Yeah.
There's
Talking
no
about
false premise,
closing-
don't worry.
Talking about closing the gate, I think you're leaving an elephant in the room. And that is, because of the invitation from these tickets that can be used whenever, even notwithstanding the last 3 weeks that the cops can't be used. You've got people coming to the park from wherever, maybe Ohio City, and they've driven all that way to get to this festival, because they got a ticket that says they can come to the festival. And if they get there, and either there's a line or they see flashing lights, so far it's just been lot closed. There's been nothing that says, ever, in any of this, that the festival is closed. Turn around and go home. It's lot closed. So, well, just because the lot's closed, I'm parking on the road. And the signs don't matter,
No.
right? They've come all this way, they got a ticket, I got my kids in the car, I'm parking and I'm going in that park. So the plan has to include a comprehensive way to educate and inform all the drivers that, look, the festival, not just the lot, the festival's closed, you're too late, sorry. And I don't know how you do that, but if you don't do that, you're going to leave those cars on the road, which is the problem that you guys are still gonna have.
Oh,
And so that's the plan. It can't be as simple as just open the gates to the parking lot. And I'm sure that'll help with some professional parkers. But it's the bigger issue of managing the volume of people that have a ticket that lets them come to this festival on a given, whenever they want to come. And what do you do about that? It is not just as simple as managing, opening and closing the gates of the parking lot. That's a simplistic approach.
Because managing the whole problem so that it doesn't do all the other things that it does is more than that issue. It is being sure you can get the traffic into your facility or new facilities fast enough to get them off the road. That's what's got to happen. Then all these traffic problems and all the rest of this goes away instantly. That's what happens. So you have to get them up. You can't just say, well, my parking lot's still open and I got 7 miles of backed up traffic, so I'm good to go. Because then we still have the problem.
I'm not saying
Well, because I think we're pretty generous and fair by saying 2 miles each way.
2 miles is not, I mean, I was using, so I'll tell you what I was using as my parameter last year. I was using Shields Road. If traffic backed up to Shields Road, then we did some adjusting inside and it worked.
That's roughly the 2 mile mark.
That's roughly the 2 miles.
And I'm just, I don't know, I'm growing weary of talking about past experience. I'm looking towards how do we fix this, and how do we put the means in place to fix it, or at least, not live this again. And I understood earlier it's tied to the permitting process, but now I'm thoroughly confused. Do we just sit and wait for the proposal to come forward and take no action?
Well, I mean, that is, you only have so much regulatory authority to be proactive, to tell them what to do. I mean, that's not your lawful role.
Right.
Your lawful role is to receive an application, and hopefully over the time that this ordinance has evolved, which this is an evolutionary ordinance, right? There's been ornaments put on it over the years to accommodate the problems that have required modification, with an eye towards hopefully educating the applicant to come with a plan that works, so the commission can just tick, 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 go down the list, this is going to work, thank you, and approve the permit. It's not up to you to create the formula for the private property owner. It's not. So I get it. It's late in the day, and you want to make this work, but it is not your role to create that plan.
That's why I still think there's some key points out of, and I'm not saying take the entire ordinance, but there's some key points that could be used as starter points to draft a letter to MRF to say, please provide the plan that we'll go through, and or a plan must be provided that must address the following. You go through, and there are some really key elements in the ordinance that can be reiterated. And then with the expectation of some kind of sign-off approval between the road commission and the county sheriff, but then that plan gets proposed. At the end of the day, the planning commission has a first right of refusal. You can deny them a permit. There's nothing saying that we're forced to, if they do not meet their obligation per the ordinance. The bottom line is, as long as we document the reason for denial for the permit, you're covered. If they want to take you to court, so be it. But you at least document why you're denying and move on.
So
instead of trying to do a bunch of hand-holding to walk them through the process, because we want to make sure they have a permit, maybe we don't do that this time.
Right.
We lay it out. Here's what you need to comply within the ordinance. You need to have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And if the plan's not sufficient, then guess what? You document what's not sufficient, and oh, by the way, you're denied your permit.
So that kind of, I'm coming right back to it, I promise. That kind of turns it back to the notion of a proposal. Is that within recommendation or a proposal? See, I see a danger in kind of holding ourselves out as subject matter experts here and identifying.
Yeah, we're not.
We're not, exactly.
I've participated in comments, assistance from the township going to the festival through the years. So it's not like the township hasn't tried to be helpful, hasn't tried to guide the festival in ways that the township believes might be helpful to the applicant to craft a plan that would work. So far, that hasn't happened.
Right.
So I completely agree with your what you just articulated.
Mhm.
And we can do it again. Bob just wrote a 7-page letter that integrated a lot of what Fishbeck had identified, and that was pointing out to the festival what needed to happen, in the opinion of the non-professionals in Groveland Township, using some of the advice from professionals, urging the festival to hire professionals to put together a plan. We can do that again.
Okay.
You know,
I would say
I don't think the township needs to, but it can.
It's being done, it's being done, I don't know why you keep bringing it, it's being done.
And I would
Low
say,
engineering is on board to get us
why
done.
go and go through all that and put forth all that headache? Just,
You just
that's
give
what I
us a
would
simple
say.
plan.
Lynn Shank has
Go ahead,
been
Lynn.
waiting all night.
Okay.
Here we go.
Right at the very beginning, I would say the first 3 weekends, maybe 4 weekends, free tickets, but they have to be a different color. Because if you give me a free one, when I go, I just hand it to them, they don't look at them. It must be a different color. So make the first 3, the freebies have to be totally different, that anybody, oh yeah, that's a freebie. They have to be able to recognize it, the person, nope, you can't come in. It's the 4th weekend, 5th weekend, nope, you can't come in, kick them out. Also, make it the Friday that kids come, make that a freebie. Because that's the only time I'm ever gonna go, is
That's the
that
push.
Friday.
I'd love to have more people on that Friday.
Yeah,
Yes.
but like Bob and Will said, you're just shifting the amount of people to a different weekend, so you're gonna get overcrowded on that weekend?
No.
Well,
You're gonna balance it out.
Smooth out the.
A second thing,
That's
you
the
said you
problem.
can't get people, police officers. What do they do at the Oakland County? Retired police officers. Some of my ex-students are retired police officers. They're at the county. Hire those guys.
No, we get deputies.
Cause
We have-
I'll
we
talk
have
to Sean. He's one of my hunters. He kills deer for me and coyotes.
No, we have the deputies. This year though.
No, they're not deputies. They're retired.
No, I'm saying
Okay.
we have the staff for the sheriff's department.
Are you sure? You're saying you're short?
No, we're, the sheriff's department itself is short-staffed. That's not us, not festival. The sheriff's department itself is probably about, what did Mike say, what the sheriff said?
He said 80 or 90.
80, 90 deputies short.
Well, if you need people to work following traffic, get a hold of those guys.
So we're working with price and reserves and the mounted division this year to come out and do some stuff.
But again, I think it gets back to, we need to stop spoon feeding solutions, because at the end of the day, we're not the experts.
No.
Because we're gonna miss something. Leave it to the experts. I think we just put together a letter that hits the points, the important points from the ordinance, and then, request, basically, you must have a plan that has also been reviewed by the county sheriff and the road commission for review in order to get your permit, and then we go through, we review that plan, but I would not be going, if they want us to, review a draft and provide feedback, then we can provide feedback, right? Or, yeah, we don't like this section, how about this as a suggestion? I think we could go through and do that as an iterative process, but when it comes go time to vote on that permit, and that plan that's in place, if that's not adequate, and what I mean adequate is if it's not properly approved by, if the road commission's not nodding their head and the county sheriff's not nodding their
Did you say
head,
you already have
those are
an
the
approved plan?
experts.
The sheriff's department already did it. I can't.
So the
I'll
problem
bring it and
arose,
give it to Danielle.
the problem arose from closing the gates when the parking lot was empty.
Absolutely, sir.
So that was a parking
I think,
problem.
and I think
Parking.
to resolve the whole thing really, I think Will would agree, is we just need to put our plan together, present it to you guys for your review and your critique, and then go from there. It's not a matter of you writing a plan, it's us
Right.
writing our plan, which is the way it's supposed to be,
And
correct?
that may have been a problem on that one where you had the empty parking lot, but it was a bigger problem when your parking lot was full and you closed the parking in not the festival. Cause that's the one where we
Right.
had
No, and
all the cars parked on Dixie Highway and miles of traffic.
Okay, so I guess at this point, unless there's further input or commentary, we should kind of bring the Renaissance Festival discussion to a close, at least for tonight. So I'm gonna do that and move to the next agenda on the item, or next item on the agenda. My brain is tired. And
Do
this,
taxes with me tomorrow
this
for
is
4 hours.
the zoning ordinance update. Now, Beckett Rader's not here tonight. Liz is not here. Is this something you're prepared to
I
brief
just
us on?
want to say before you stop the discussion, do you want to make a motion for anything that you guys have discussed in a timeline as to when you want to see something?
Danielle, I'm gonna tell you, I actually contemplated that in my mind. I don't know what we would motion. Does any?
I would say what we need to do is, I don't think we're in a position to make a motion tonight,
No.
but I think we do need a special meeting where we get people together, where we can draft. We can come up with a timeline, draft a letter, that would, that we can all vote on and agree on, that would then be issued to, MRF. As an outline, that's what I would propose, is a special meeting to go through and do that.
That's good, that's an excellent.
Because otherwise we'll be up all night trying to construct a meeting and come up with the timeline. I would say if we could do something soon.
Do you want to wait for their response first, or do we want,
No,
because he says there's something in the works
I
for
wouldn't.
any day now.
No,
I would.
No.
I don't think that would be wise.
I think you're gonna get a lot of the same. It would be-
Yeah.
I hate to sound negative, but, so the contract he says he's got with the sheriff's department. He may have something that the sheriff's department signed off on, but I'll bet you it doesn't specify exactly the services to be performed, when they're to be performed, how many people, I just don't think we have it.
We got it last year.
Well,
So this was great, thank you. This is my copy, or you wanna make it?
I think that's-
But yeah, I would propose, I mean, quite frankly, I would propose as early as sometime next week, that we just have a special meeting where we can go through and pull that together, because then that way we can you get it issued, and then we can move on.
I'd agree.
Because
I would-
we are running out of time.
yeah,
How much time, before the actual festival starts, does the permit application have to be?
I thought it was,
60 or
there's-
90?
There's
some variables.
120.
60 days and 30 days. I would probably say one of the, let's see the stuff that I
Does
see.
the festival start in September?
No, August.
No, August.
Danielle would know the answer to that question, David.
Pardon?
Danielle would know the answer to
What's
that
that?
question.
Festival
much
starts
before-
mid-August,
How long
Days
before the
after. Say,
festival starts does the
19th August.
the application have to be submitted?
We,
Yes.
last year, we wanted it submitted 90 days prior.
Okay.
In the ordinance, it says,
Well, there's different days.
There's
a couple
different
different
dates.
aspects,
There was,
yeah.
it depended on if you were looking, which ordinance you were looking at.
It's exactly right.
I think one said 90 and one said 120 and
One says 30.
in one, okay. So,
I would say no later than May to start, to submit the permit and payments.
What does the ordinance say?
Well, and there's a lot of,
Sounds like we need to tighten up the ordinance.
yeah.
Danielle, does there have to be a notification for a special meeting? Isn't there? Yeah, there's gotta be publication, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so we couldn't do it next week.
How many
Are we
days
too
do we
late
need
for that?
for a special
2
meeting?
weeks.
How many days in advance?
I need to
notice?
have it,
Public notice.
a public notice in the newspaper 15 days prior, and our newspapers only go out on Saturdays.
For a PCD?
For what?
It's a non-scheduled one,
special.
Do you need
It's a special.
a newspaper notice for a special meeting for the PC to work on the thing in next week? I don't think so.
Not especially.
I mean, I think you gotta post it on the
May
door.
20th would be 90 days.
18 hours ahead of time, whatever, you know.
May
So-
20th is 90 days.
So if that's possible, if we can go ahead and try to schedule a meeting next week.
You're looking at it like a work session to get it kind of roughed
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
and that's no different than the board calling a
Yes.
special meeting. We got a meeting, we gotta get something done. We posted 18 hours before it
Yeah,
happens.
exactly.
And,
That's what I'm trying to work on, because otherwise, we're not
So
gonna do it.
not for the special permit?
No.
They wanna discuss and work out the bullet point.
We wanna work up bullet points for a letter, and then also discuss it online.
18 hours.
18 hours,
Okay.
you have to have it posted.
So-
It does not have to go in the.
So can we open up our calendars to figure out when all of us can be available, or a good group of us can be available next week?
Don't do it Wednesday and Thursday. I do 8 hours of free taxes on Wednesday and Thursday for
And then,
AARP. Please don't make me, I can't do anything. I'm tired.
Can we do early next week, like the 6th or 7th?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming.
If you can't sleep tonight, you can count Renaissance tickets.
No, I was just gonna say, if it gets the last 2 or 3 weekends, anybody's welcome to come over to my place and see how bad it gets.
But believe me, I've seen that,
Oh, you know what? Hey, I got her phone
So
number.
under
What
the,
days did you say were bad?
Wednesday and Thursday.
Wednesday,
under the
Thursday.
Monday and
seasonal
Tuesday
outdoor
are
festivals
good for
related
me.
traffic.
Tuesday I do taxes. I do
It's
tutoring
90
for 4
days
hours,
prior
but
to the
that's from
expiration
2:30
date.
to
So these are
6:30, but
1 year
I can be here.
permits.
Okay, 7
So,
o'clock would be okay. Tuesday,
90
David, is
days
Tuesday
is
work
the
for you?
expiration of the current permit date.
Tuesday, the 7th
Monday's better.
at 7 PM?
Mondays be
So
fine.
whatever the date is that
That they
this current
approve.
one expires, I don't know what date that is,
If
but
we do the
whatever the
evening,
Tuesday at
expiration
7?
date.
yeah.
The 7th?
Probably will.
Correct.
I can do Tuesday, what time?
So they've got
7 p.m.
seven
Tuesday, March
7
7th.
days
Yeah.
before that
Okay.
date.
We will reconvene
All right, let's do it.
with an eye towards,
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, thanks again.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, you guys
Night,
gotta do some
Wayne.
Algebra 2 with me, because that's what I tutor.
all
Algebra
right.
2 and
Tuesday,
geometry.
March 7th would be, Danielle, you got that? 7 PM would be a special meeting of the Planning Commission for the purpose of drafting an advisory letter, a written proposal, however you want to term it, looking towards this year's approval of the special use permit for the Renaissance Festival.
So, to your questions about the timing, so under the seasonal outdoor festivals and related traffic control ordinance, that requires the applicant to submit its application for the next season 90 days before the expiration of the current permit. So whenever the current permit
When was-
expires, they've got to get their application in at least 90 days before that. Now,
Before the expiration of the
before
current
the
one?
expiration of the current one.
So the question is, when did we sign it last year?
Yeah, when did it
When
expire?
did we get it last year? Because it's 90 days before that date.
No, it's 90 days from the expiration date. So when I
When does it expire?
don't know, it's,
That's why I
I would
said you
assume
need
it's
to
the
know
last
when it
day
was
they
signed.
perform.
so it's a.
Which
it's a
wouldn't
1
work.
year-
I mean, would
it's a
you know when
1 year
it
permit.
expires?
Might have to meet in the basement.
It would be
because that's tax,
365 days,
field days.
1 year.
Okay.
So
you
the
know.
question is, when did we approve
Just downstairs.
their contract last year?
In July last
Can I
year.
complain about my taxes
It's a
on my
1 year-
11.6 acres?
So whatever the date.
Certainly
It went up
can.
170%.
It's
One
90.
1 year's
Holy
It
shit.
expires 1 year. from
Blank
the date.
land.
So back in
And I added it to
90
mine
days
to have
from now.
45.
That's when they have to apply.
I added an extra 11 and a half acres.
With the motion on.
Well, but if it's adjacent parcels.
Sometimes Angela, you gotta grab me by the scruff of my neck and pull me back.
Seriously?
'cause
I think.
I
They're both
get
the
so
same name, they treat it the
granular.
same.
I just
You
can't-
do.
I
Right?
haven't combined them. Do I need to combine them?
Engineers that used to work for me.
The who?
The engineers that used to work for
Honestly,
me.
when
My
the
one
ordinance
does.
says-
Bring them
when
up.
the ordinance
Bring
says
them up just a little bit.
that
I don't think that should have generated.
Thank
an
you.
increase unless-
Okay.
vocation for some.
We still
I haven't
need-
combined them.
We still need a
I have 33, and then I
You have to
have
what?
11.5.
Yes, can we-
33.3.
April.
Can I,
April 6th.
Bring it to order.
can I ask that we bring the meeting back to order? We have to finish the agenda.
We're not finished.
And,
We're not
and
done yet, folks.
Danielle, I don't know if you want to table the zoning ordinance update until,
It's just being, it's in progress, that's all I need to say.
that's
about
it, okay. So that being said, is there any other comments, questions regarding, you know, anything discussed here tonight that people want to get off their chest if they haven't already?
May I make a motion?
Okay, then at this time I would entertain a motion to
May I
adjourn.
make a motion, we adjourn for today?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Let's go home.
Where else can you have this much fun, right?
Oh, let me tell you.
Well, I'm sure there's more.
Tomorrow I will, doing taxes.
I did sit on the school board, so.
Did you? Oh, that's gotta be a glutton for punishment
Right.
there.
Which one?
Roll Goodrich.
Goodrich?
But it wasn't
Yeah.
for the day of the
I
permit.
went through the COVID years.
When they were making the motion.
It's hard to navigate around those
It
chairs.
was not submitted
Kids
there.
stuck his head in the thing, and she put it on the internet.
Then they should have brought it to me.
I have to hug Marie.
So-
She can't leave
At
without
that
my
time, I've
hug.
been, at that time, I've been in the sheriff's department
Oh,
about
my
15 years.
Scatter.
And I've never felt
my
threatened in my life.
Those
Those teachers
And-
videotape
and one for
kids
Jake.
stuck in a chair. It was in the
He'll
news.
jump all over you.
He was an autistic child. She videotaped it and made comments like,
Hallelujah.
just because it's an emergency for you doesn't make it an emergency for anybody
Oh,
else.
no,
And she
that's
posted it
so-
on.
No.
We wanted to fire the teacher.
Yes.
Parents are like that we wanted to fire this teacher.
Good job.
Why would we want to fire them?
Beat down, Lynn.
It wasn't their kid, it was a
Of
trouble
course,
kid.
but if it was their.
I have a copy, but.
So at the board meeting that night, they brought in every student and sat them semicircle right in front of the board. And their parents were all with them, and their grandparents were with them when we voted to suspend this teacher. I went home that night.
Suspend or fire?
I wanted to fire her, but at the time we were suspending. I went home that night and I placed guns all around my house, and my wife looked at me and she goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Those people are crazy. They would not let me out of my parking spot."
Is that
I had a grandfather who just refused to let me out because I was the devil and I wanted this teacher gone. It was the craziest thing.
And they were supporting
They were supporting the teacher.
the teacher?
Because the child was autistic and he was a problem child in the classroom. And it was the craziest. I lost a superintendent over it.
Oh my goodness, that's
Yeah, it
awful.
was- And then they cut a backdoor deal to let her stay. And she had a 1-year suspension and they got her back the following year on a work contract. Yeah, it was
People-
terrible. So
Crazy
got to watch
is,
that.
as crazy
I
does.
sat there through
Right,
crazy
John?
times.
It's just bad, you know?
Yeah.
It
Was
just
the
plain is all.
autistic child in a regular classroom?
We don't, they didn't.
Be careful, it's probably slippery as heck.
It's all mainstream.
It's all mainstream. Every kid,
Slushy. And it's
it's an
dropping.
opportunity.
They treat every kid
Hey, well,
equal otherwise.
Hey, thanks for coming, man. I asked about you yesterday, and just because I was happy to hear
Which
you
is
were
wrong, you're
gonna
you're
be
basically
here.
just-
all right.
I don't know.
I didn't get worked up, but I can tell you. So, but they're in a regular classroom.
Mainstream.
Crazy.
Just for example,
I'm gonna look at this. Crazy, and I will apologize to you, I do.
The reason why I wasn't in there, because
Opening
it's not
that
signed.
part, that entrance.
It wasn't.
exit
Yeah,
is not open.
it blew my mind when I never
We had
included
just
it.
final
Asphalt.
throwing the stuff down and we wanted to make sure that it's settled, and we knew that, you know, this was the first weekend, we weren't, we used every weekend after that.
Yeah,
It
we were,
worked
it was the
great.
first weekend we went to, so
That-
yeah, you're right.
That
not a
worked extremely.
Did we adjourn?
The way that we
Yeah,
did it
so-
sounds
so-
good.
Motion.
So when you guys.
I have some